Chapter 561. Not only that, I have plenty of them. As for the others? He looked at the Tao Lord calmly. He reached out and grabbed the air. Then, a long spear with gold essence and silver soul as its tassel appeared in his hand, emitting a murderous aura and radiating a cold light. His body shook slightly. Then he put on a chain-linked cloud leaf armor, a crown with 2 dragons fighting for pearls, and a pair of boots with a bronze lion's tail dipped in gold. I have plenty of divine weapons and treasured armors. Under the shocked gazes of the Tao Lord and the other demons, he took 2 steps forward in the air, held his spear and stood in the wind. He said calmly, "The warm-up is over. Now as you wish, I'll play with you." His calm words were filled with obvious viciousness. Every word seemed to have been soaked in the most evil poison for 100 years before being fished out and uttered to the Tao Lord, whose expression was now frozen on his face. Amidst the long and intense battles tonight, the scene of deathly silence had appeared more than once. But there had never been a time when it made people feel as if they were suffocating. How scheming. The Tao Lord was stunned for a full 3 breaths. Then he calmed down and stared at Li Yunxin. "But do you think I'm afraid of you?" After he said that, he waved his sleeve and also destroyed his aura to the extreme. "Li Yunxin, take this." His shout was like a rumbling thunder, causing the Demon King's skulls to go numb. However, as soon as he finished speaking, the fiery-robed Tao Lord turned and fled. He didn't hesitate at all. The demons were in an uproar. They thought that their eyes were blinded by Li Yunxin's dazzling jewels and treasures. However, when they focused their eyes again, the Tao Lord had indeed fled hundreds of feet away. Who would have thought that the 5th dragon's son, who had been awe-inspiring in front of the demons and seemed to have the power to command all the demon kings in the world, would actually run away just like that? The crowd of demons was in an uproar, but Li Yunxin only sneered coldly. "The ambition of falling into the formation will only lead to death. I'm not done playing. Where can you go?" As he spoke, his long sword shot out like a bolt of lightning towards the Tao Lord's back. There is a poem to prove it. A cold glint appeared first, followed by the spear like a dragon. His long lance was actually a rare treasure in the world. Although he was fast, he was still not as fast as the Tao Lord's escape. It seemed that he would not be able to catch up to him. However, there seemed to be no need to chase. In front of the frantically fleeing Tao Lord, a speck of cold light suddenly appeared, revealing half a spearhead. It turned out that this treasured lance also had the ability to shatter the void and fake the rules of force. When the Taoist monarch saw this, he was shocked and immediately changed his direction to the side. However, the treasured lance immediately unleashed a storm of attacks that enveloped him from all sides. Seeing that the situation was far from good, he didn't know what treasure he had taken out. First, a layer of golden light shrouded his body. Then, a dazzling golden flower shadow suddenly bloomed in the space, dispersing almost all of the attacks from the treasured lance, leaving only a few scattered phantoms in front of him. When they collided with his golden light, there was a series of clanging sounds like rain falling on banana leaves, but they couldn't hurt him at all. Then the Tao Lord sneered. "Want to keep me here?" Then he flew forward. It would have been fine if he hadn't said that. Now that he had said it, Li Yunxin also sneered. "You want to compete with me in wealth? Come on." After saying that, he waved his hand, and a colorful rain of light instantly sprayed out. When the demons saw that Li Yunxin had created another set of armor, they were all dumbfounded and thought to themselves, "He is indeed extravagant." Now that they saw the rain of light, they wondered what kind of magic treasure he had released. However, when the raindrops rapidly grew in size in the air and shone brightly, they were dumbfounded. It was not a magic treasure. It was obvious that he had released dozens of magic treasures at once. Each of them was like a treasured lance with its own divine power. As soon as they appeared, they used their own methods. The demons were dazzled, but before they could see clearly what kind of divine power they had, the Tao Lord, who had already jumped more than 1,000 feet away, was captured again. Seeing the Tao Lord's appearance, the demons had to sigh with emotion. After all, Dragon's son was a demon among demons, a member of the nobility of the Dragon dynasty. Now he was surrounded by more than 30 different kinds of treasures. Some looked like sabers, spears, swords, and halberds. Some looked like flower baskets, iron pots, jade hairpins, and so on. There were also some that didn't have a physical form, just shadows. These treasures were like living creatures, eerily facing the Tao Lord and surrounding him. However, this Tao Lord had been running the Crimson Firmament Palace for 2,000 years, and he seemed to have collected many good things. Now it seemed that he had used all of them to save his life. He was surrounded by 49 small swords, forming a sword formation. There were dozens of round, shining beads in between the gaps. The light released from the beads blocked the restrictions, preventing them from enveloping the Tao Lord. There were also dozens of flying knives, flying swords, iron rulers, and scepters, a total of nearly 100 treasures added together to protect him, temporarily keeping him safe. However, these treasures were clearly not of the same grade as the treasures left behind by Saint Yunshan. In just a few breaths, the swords and sabers let out hoarse sounds of being unable to withstand the pressure, and cracks appeared. The Tao Lord struggled for a while, dodging left and right, but still couldn't escape. Only then did he turn to stare at Li Yunxin, shouting in a low voice, "I advise you not to force me to fight to the death with you." Li Yunxin sneered and took a step in the void. Immediately, a pure white cloud formed under his feet and supported him. It seemed it was also a magic treasure. He walked a few steps on this cloud, stared at the Tao Lord for a while and said, "Fight to the death with me, do you think you're worthy? That old thing Su Yusong wanted to use the magical power of the mystic realm to kill me, but in the end he got himself killed." Li Yunxin stared at him with a faint smile. "Do you want to try?" 10 breaths ago, this Tao Lord was full of ambition, and Long Jiu was in a sorry state, as if he was at the end of his rope. But now the situation was reversed and this famous Tao Lord was in prison. He was about to become a stray dog. The situation changed so quickly. So much so that many demon kings in the distance still didn't know what was going on. The Tao Lord looked at Li Yunxin with a ferocious expression. After hesitating for a moment, he didn't say anything, but suddenly turned his head and shouted at the crowd of demons, "What are you waiting for? This Li Yunxin has so many treasures on him, and you're only willing to pick up some trash? Now come up and kill him, all the treasures are yours. The Taoist technique that I promised you is also yours." But Li Yunxin didn't say anything. He also turned his face and looked at the crowd of demons, and these demons came here a quarter of an hour ago for the treasures on him. Now, they knew that he really had a lot of rare treasures and they got another promise from the Tao Lord, but they hesitated and hesitated again. Today was different from the past. Even the powerful mystic realm Long Sun died in the hands of Li Yunxin. And he saw that there were still more treasures that he hadn't used. Although the demons were greedy, their lives weren't other people's lives that could be casually taken away to die. Who dared to touch this bad luck? Seeing this, Li Yunxin sneered again, "They came to take my treasures but they might not have the life to use them. But wait until I kill you and take your treasures. Although they're just bits and pieces, they can still be used. Tell me, why did they come to me to seek death?" The Tao Lord's face became extremely ugly. But he still shouted, "A bunch of idiots. Do you think he'll let you go after killing me? Think about what he has on him." When he said this, the magic treasures that protected him gradually couldn't hold on anymore. The 49 flying swords made a twisting sound and soon 4 of them broke into pieces. He has already used so many, how many more can he have? The treasures of Cloud Mountain are the treasures left by the saints of the past, so they must be strictly guarded. If he could take them out when he was just in the true realm, how many heroes among the demons in the past tens of thousands of years don't know how to take them themselves? Look at him now, he's arrogant, but in fact he's deliberately mystifying. He used everything he could in one breath, scaring you so that you don't dare to come forward. Otherwise, why would he say these words to me here and not take my life immediately? Idiots. Great wealth and opportunities are right in front of you. After tonight, when Li Yunxin hides in the mountain, where can you find him? If you refine for 1 or 2,000 years, can you refine the magic treasures on him? What are you waiting for? Although the Tao Lord's tongue was good, what he said now was a bit far-fetched. If it was in the secular world, he probably wouldn't be able to scare many people. But many of these demons were not as smart as the mortals in the secular world. Moreover, they were short-sighted people who had no standpoint. After he said this, there were actually some who were eager to make trouble, and looked at Li Yunxin with malicious eyes. Seeing this, the Tao Lord exerted all his strength to activate the magic treasures to resist the pressure of Li Yunxin's treasures, and shouted with all his might, "Think again. This Li Yunxin dared to kill Long Jiu, dared to kill Long Air, and now killed me. He has already become an enemy of the dragons. He is such a fake, he will be killed by the world in the future. That's why he's so arrogant and crazy. Once I die, he will definitely kill you. If you don't help me now, just wait for me to be slaughtered like a pig or a dog after I die." He mentioned counterfeits, which was a new term for the demons. Before this, they had always called him Li Yunxin, which was a personal name. It was not unusual for demons to have a personal name. For example, Red Lady's personal name was Li Xinyu, and Zither Lady's personal name was Bailey Qinshin. However, fiendish demons had complicated and contradictory feelings towards humans. When they were livestock, they were naturally inferior to humans. They wholeheartedly wanted to achieve the Tao and transform into human form, so that they could cultivate with the meridians of humans. However, after transforming into humans, they had the spiritual intelligence of humans, and their bodies were far stronger than that of humans. Moreover, they saw the stupidity and weakness of mortals, so they looked down on them and wanted to use them as food. But there were also cultivators among humans, and the power of Shenmen was also oppressing the demons. Chapter 562. Therefore, these many emotions intertwined together, causing them to have a very complicated feeling towards human names. On the one hand, they wanted this name. On the other hand, they felt that it was undignified and would be ridiculed by others. Only the most unruly and powerful part of them didn't mind this. Lord Taoist and these demons called Li Yunshin, instead of Lord of Wei River, Qi Wen, or even Dragon Jiu, which was actually very disdainful. Now that the word impostor was mentioned, some demons who didn't understand asked what it meant. Not many people knew that Dragon Jiu was possessed by a person. In the past, only a limited number of famous great demon kings under Lord Tongtian and Guqin monarch had heard of it. Now that it had been mentioned, the news quickly spread. Everyone knew that Dragon Jiu used to be a mere transcendent state. What they didn't know was that Dragon Jiu, as Dragon's son, was the shame of demons. Not only was his realm low, but he was also killed and possessed by a person. That person was the current Li Yunshin. The ninth young master used to hide in the Wei River and had a mysterious great demon Lord Dongting by his side. It could be said that he was monitoring or protecting him, but after all, the demons knew very little about the ninth dragon's son. If it wasn't for today's incident, many demons would have thought that this Li Yunshin was the previous Dragon Jiu. When the words really spread, the demons looked at Li Yunshin in a different way. For these demons who had no standpoint, many factors could cause a subtle change in their attitude. Now that they knew that Li Yunshin was not the real dragons, first a demonic voice called out. If this is true, this Li Yunshin killed Lord Taoist, I'm afraid that he will really come to us. Then someone said, Li Yunshin. Is what Lord Taoist said true? After all, there were many demons. It was like a dark cloud surrounding the two people who were fighting. Some of the busybodies didn't have to worry about being caught if they were to talk. So, for a moment, voices of agreement rose from all around. It was as if a pack of wolves had surrounded their prey and were testing the waters before launching an all-out attack. It seemed as if they were about to swarm forward together. How could Li Yunshin answer their nonsense? He stood still on the cloud. He brandished the treasured lance in his hand and said coldly, If you want to seek death, then come. Come on, if I let any of you leave alive, then I'll consider my title as the Wei River Lord just an empty title. He was practically saying this to all the demon kings in the world. It could be said that he was the most arrogant person in the world. As a result, shouts and curses could be heard from all directions, but in the end, no one rushed forward. When the Tao Lord saw this, he was delighted and was about to speak again. Suddenly someone said, Fifth brother said earlier that no one is allowed to interfere. Although there is a madman from the Shenmen sect here, so it can't be considered a fair duel, he is still a human cultivator. He can't be considered as a demon, so I'll just pretend that he doesn't exist. But now, the human cultivator is already dead, and everyone here is a fiendish demon. At this time, if anyone dares to interfere, I'll be the first to not allow it. The words that I, the dragons, say in front of all the demons in the world, can't be ignored. Hearing this voice, the Tao Lord's expression changed greatly. He saw that the group of demons in the sky slowly parted to form a path. It was the dragon third evil spirit and the female demon beside her, Bai Yunshin, who came on the cloud. 15 minutes ago he wasn't afraid of these two people. At that time he was confident that he had the power to kill Li Yunshin in an instant. Moreover, the hearts of all the demon kings were on his side. If the evil spirit came to help Li Yunshin, he only needed to ask the demons to stop him. In fact, when he said that he didn't want the demons to interfere, it was to guard against this. But now the situation was reversed and his third sister appeared. It was like adding snow to snow. Previously, Li Yunshin said that the Tao Lord was an interesting fiendish demon. At this time, the Tao Lord was indeed interesting. When the evil spirit was seriously injured, he said in the sky that he didn't deserve to be Dragon's son, but Pengzi. Now he was trapped in Li Yunshin's attack and couldn't escape temporarily, so his attitude changed drastically. Third sister. What are you talking about? He shouted immediately, This Li Yunshin killed our ninth brother and took his body? Third sister, are you going to treat him as your family now? We are real siblings. Third sister, don't be fooled by his flowery words. Li Yunxin laughed loudly and pointed at the Tao Lord from afar. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. This is the first time I've seen a fiendish demon like you. Let me see what else you can say. But the Tao Lord's expression didn't change at all. He ignored Li Yunxin's sarcasm and said, Third sister, did you receive some benefits from him, and also want to be enemies with all the demons in the world? Don't you even remember the death of our ninth brother? It's a pity that our ninth brother died so miserably. That day I saw him with my own eyes. I saw it with my own eyes. His words of grief and indignation were interrupted again. What did fifth brother see with his own eyes? Hearing this voice, the Tao Lord frowned. The demons also looked in the direction of the voice, and were somewhat puzzled. This time it was a man's voice. But although he called the Tao Lord Swan fifth brother, the Tao Lord didn't have any impression of him. Then another person walked out from the crowd of demons. This person was extremely handsome. Even according to the weird aesthetic standards of the demons, Li Yunxin was also very beautiful. At least among the demons now, no one was better than him. However, the person who had just walked out was even more handsome than him. He was also wearing a white robe. Although his face was calm, there was a hint of evil charm. In this aspect it formed a contrast with Li Yunxin. Both of them were handsome. But Li Yunxin's handsomeness made people feel close to him when they saw him. But this person only made people afraid of being charmed by him. This person didn't hide his aura at all. It was even as if he was showing off, and he released it without any scruples. The demons knew that this was a great demon at the peak of the true realm. The peak of the true realm was indeed an extremely powerful cultivation in the whole world. But in this situation it wasn't the top. There was a fiend lord at the peak of the profound realm. A Tao lord at the Shi mystical realm. And there was also Li Yunxin who was at the same realm. Not to mention that there were more than 10 profound realm and even more true realm demons among the demons. They didn't know why this person was showing off. The Tao Lord stared at him and frowned. Who are you? This person called him fifth brother. However, he was not one of the remaining dragon sons that the Tao Lord knew. He could not even match his cultivation level. But the strange thing was, he did have dragon chi on him. But the dragon chi made him frown. He felt that there was something else mixed in it that he couldn't explain. But among the demons, a voice suddenly exclaimed, Didn't they say, he died? Someone else asked the person who spoke. Hearing this, the demon hesitated for a while. Finally, he said with certainty, Isn't this Dragon Geo? I once passed by Wei River, and met Dragon Geo. As soon as he said this, there were a few voices echoing him. Some said it was true, some said they had seen him before. The demons were in an uproar. The Tao Lord was even more surprised and shouted, Who is misleading us? The handsome man smiled evilly, squinted his eyes and looked at the source of the voice. It's you. You scorpion spirit passed by my Wei River and ate a family of 3 people in the city. I wanted to kill you but you escaped. You were only at the transcendent realm then. Now you have cultivated to the true realm. You've really improved. The scorpion spirit didn't say anything. It looked like he was right, he was afraid of being sought revenge so he quickly retreated. The Tao Lord widened his eyes. Where did this madman come from? My 9th brother has been killed by Li Yunxin. 5th brother, I'm still alive. The man looked at the Tao Lord with a malicious gaze. Not only am I alive, but I have also cultivated to the peak of the true realm. 5th brother, you said I was killed in front of all the demons? What are your intentions? As he said this, his appearance changed. Fine scales appeared on his face, and a pair of blood-red coral antlers grew out of his forehead. Clouds and mist rose under his sleeves. He really was dragons. Chiwen. The 9th young master stared at the Tao Lord, and then slowly turned his head to look at the demons. He said darkly, Because of a coincidence, I had to cultivate in seclusion. So I temporarily entrusted Wei River to Li Yunxin. This Li Yunxin is good at doing things and he's also my friend. Later he was summoned by Shinryu who personally conferred Wei River to him. Thus, the title of Wei River Lord naturally belonged to him. My 3rd sister can testify to this. If there is a rumor that I was killed and possessed. He's really evil and should be punished. The demons were speechless. Or perhaps they had a lot of things to say. But with 4 dragon sons, including one who was said to be dead, they really didn't understand the current situation. How dare they talk nonsense? The Tao Lord was furious. You idiot. I'll take it that you're really Chi-Wen of the Dragon 9? Let me ask you, have you ever thought about what you said for Li Yunxin because of some petty benefits, or because you were threatened by them? Have you ever thought about how you will live in the future if you admit that your title and land belong to him in front of all the heroes in the world? Where will you go? You don't have to worry about this. Li Yunxin had been watching the show with cold eyes. Now, he finally opened his mouth and said lazily, "The Lord of Shinryu is naturally powerful. He conferred me the title of Wei River Lord and gave me Wei River. How could he not consider what you said?" Speaking of this, his tone gradually turned cold. The Lord already knew. Long de Chionyo and Long Heir of Hatred were plotting against me. So I got rid of these two troubles. He also said that the ninth young master had made great contributions in protecting the Dongting dragon soul, so I couldn't mistreat him. So, after killing Long Heir of Hatred, he turned his palm and held a golden object. His face turned serious and he shouted, "Dragon 9, listen to the title." The ninth young master immediately stepped forward on a cloud and knelt down on one knee toward the object in Li Yunxin's palm, saying, "Dragon 9, receive the token of Shinryu." Li Yunxin shouted again, "The Dragon God token is here, pass on the Imperial Edict of Shinryu." Long Heir of Hatred plotted treason and ordered the Lord of Wei River to kill him. His title is Lord Tongtian, and his fief is heaven-reaching. Chi one of the Dragon 9. Seeing the Dragon God token is like seeing the Lord of God in person. Anyone who disobeys will be killed by all the monsters in the world. The ninth young master stood up. He looked straight into Li Yunxin's eyes and said in a deep voice, "Chi one of the Lord Tongtian. Thank the Lord of Shinryu for his grace." Chapter 563. The group of demons was silent. In fact, since the moment that golden object appeared in Li Yunxin's hand, no one dared to speak anymore. These demons might not recognize the shape of that object. But they could definitely feel the aura that was emitted from that object. It was so powerful that it made them want to bow down and worship it. The long, narrow, and shiny object in Li Yunxin's hand was the Dragon God token. The Divine Dragon token was made from a piece of scale armor that the true Dragon Monarch had broken when he fought against the Golden Rock King. The Lord Shinryu was the ruler of all demons in the world. But her control was not as strong as that of a human emperor, it was more like a title. Although the Dragon God token was a legendary treasure, it did have the powerful aura of Shinryu. However, if Li Yunxin were to take it out and instruct a great demon to do something, the great demon would most likely agree on the surface or even ignore her. But Li Yunxin took it out in the current situation, and it made the best use of it. The Dragon Sun was fighting, and the demons who had no side were watching and wavering. It seemed that everyone's words were reasonable, but it was not enough to make the final decision and completely suppress the other side. At this time he took out this thing that had no power, but was extremely sacred among the demons. Looking at the Lord Taoist's pale face, he knew that the situation was irreversible. Strength and reason. Now both were not on his side. What made him even angrier was that Li Yunxin took out this thing and made up some nonsense about the Lord Shinryu's Imperial Edict, which made him change the incident of killing Lord Tongtian Hatred into acting on the Lord Shinryu's order. How could the 9 of them not know what the Lord Tongtian was thinking? Indeed, they hoped that their power would be weakened. Li Yunxin's fake edict would probably turn into reality in the future. Not only would he not receive any punishment, he would even be rewarded by the Shinryu. And what's with that Long Jiao? How did he survive? He did not look like a ghostly cultivator. At this time, Li Yunxin turned to look at him and sternly shouted, "Lao Ai. I was ordered by the Divine Monarch to kill the rebellious minister, Hatred, but you obstructed me in every possible way and made things difficult for me." He even gathered a group of demon kings and demon generals to rebel. "Are you convinced that I will kill you today?" The Tao Lord cursed, "T. Who would believe your nonsense? Ask them if they believe it. Do you believe it yourself?" As soon as he finished speaking, before Li Yunxin could say anything, the group of demons immediately shouted, "Lord Wei River is wise. The Divine Lord is wise. We don't know the truth and came here to watch. How would we know that he has sinister intentions?" Exactly, this mixed fur lion betrayed his superiors, his death is not to be regretted. We are so excited that we can't wait to eat his flesh. Well said. Well said. We were deceived by this rebellious minister, we are ashamed of the Shinryu's grace. Li Yunxin said that the Divine Monarch was a hypocrite, and these demon kings were the real villains. They really did not have any standpoint, they just listened to the wind and thought it was the rain. Now that he shouted like this, the Tao Lord finally tasted what Li Yunxin had experienced before. After a moment of being stunned, he roared, "Good! You will regret this sooner or later." He said a lot of things just to use the momentum of the group of demons to break Li Yunxin's strength. He did not expect that both were in the hands of Li Yunxin. He could not get any benefits and there was no room for negotiation. Even if he was a hypocrite, he was still a big demon of the dragons. Therefore his arrogant courage finally burst out at this moment. His body shook violently and he grew with the wind. Originally he was surrounded by many magic treasures to protect him. Now, his body that was wrapped in a fiery red robe suddenly revealed Bai An's original form, and he grew dozens of feet. In an instant, those magic treasures exploded with a bang, turning into countless streams of light. As a result, when his magic treasures were destroyed, the group of demons immediately let out a loud sigh, as if those magic treasures were already in their pockets. This made Bai An even angrier, and with another roar, he revealed his true form that was hundreds of feet long. Only now did he realize that he had really been cautious before. Li Yunxin used many magic treasures, and when he saw that the situation was not good, he turned around and ran. He seemed to be extremely afraid of those things. But now that he knew that he had no way out, he had to unleash his ferocious nature. When this tyrannical true form appeared, not only did he destroy his own magic treasures, but he also scattered the magic treasures that were used to trap him, turning them into streams of light and returning to Li Yunxin's palm. Although this also caused many huge and terrible wounds to appear on his body, and the golden blood fell like a waterfall into the sea of fire on the ground, it was enough to show the tyrannical true form of the dragons. When he was really at his wit's end, he still had the power to fight back. Li Yunxin kept the magic treasures that were scattered by Bai An in his palm, looked down at them, then threw them back and snorted coldly, "Useless things. Then I'll reward you." Those dozens of magic treasures fell from the sky like garbage. This time the eyes of the group of demons were red, and the ground was in a mess. Because just now he clearly saw that when Lao Ai smashed those dozens of magical treasures into pieces, it was merely smashing them into pieces. Most of the magic treasures were intact and only a few were damaged. But even those few only had insignificant cracks, and were no different from undamaged jades. Now this way River Lord, just because he failed to trap Bai An, he casually threw them away saying they were useless things. What a damn generous man. There was probably no one else in the world who could be so generous. He was really a dragon king who gave away his wealth. The group of demons fought among themselves. However, this time, those who fought over the magic treasures were all big demon kings who didn't care about the garbage that Li Yunxin threw away. More demon kings and demon generals with slightly lower cultivation levels didn't dare to get involved in this mess, so they stared at Li Yunxin who was high up in the sky. They really wanted this generous Wei River Lord to throw down a few more pieces of trash, the best kind of course, so that they could have a share. Now Li Yunxin also shouted, "Good. Finally you look a bit like Dragon's son." Then he raised the long spear in his hand and bravely pounced forward. When demons fought in human form, they had the advantage of using divine abilities, but they weren't good at defense. If they fought with their half-human half-demon fiend god bodies, they could take care of both. But ultimately they weren't as strong as their true bodies. Now that Bai An was fighting against Li Yunxin, it didn't have much of an advantage in terms of treasures and divine abilities, so it revealed its true body, which was hundreds of feet tall, in order to fight. But Li Yunxin still fought it head-on in his human form, which was extremely fierce. When Bai An saw him coming, it first opened its mouth and spat out a mouthful of red poisonous fire. Now that its body was huge, when it spat out the fire, it swayed its head in the sky so the range of the fire was extremely large, and two enlightened Dao masters who couldn't dodge in time were caught in it. In an instant, the two true realm demon kings were turned into ashes, not even leaving behind a scream. The fire was so terrifying, but Li Yunxin's body exploded with a brilliant light, and he directly rushed in. The spear went straight for the throat of the giant Bai An beast. Bai An knew the power of his treasured spear, but he didn't panic. He shook his head again and the thick mane on his neck opened up like a big umbrella. No one knew what kind of divine ability he was born with. The space in front of his head fluctuated horribly, and Li Yunxin's body, which was clearly pouncing forward, suddenly flew backward, and the brilliant light on his body was quickly extinguished. In the blink of an eye, the treasured armor was smashed into pieces, and the white robe underneath was revealed. Only the treasured spear in his hand wasn't affected. In the instant that Li Yunxin was sent flying backward, it disappeared. The next moment, it suddenly appeared in the void above Bai An's head, and stabbed down fiercely. Bai An's true body was huge. To him, this treasured spear was like a thin needle. But everyone knew how terrifying this thin needle was. In the blink of an eye, it went into its head and let out a deafening scream. Seeing this, even the evil lord frowned and said in shock, What kind of evil technique is he practicing? As Li Yunxin's body flew backward, he shook violently. The broken armor that was still hanging on his body was shaken into tiny fragments by him and fell to the ground. At this moment, another layer of brilliant treasured armor appeared from the white robe, and he was armed. He laughed in midair. Ha! Your technique is just esos. Take another strike from me. He waved his hand again. The treasured spear that went into Baian's head came out of Baian's left eye with a buzz, and a shower of blood poured out. Being severely injured, Long Sun's screams became even louder, and the whole ground shook slightly. Looking at the treasured spear that returned to Li Yunxin's hand, the long and sharp spearhead had become a discus. It was as if a blacksmith had heated it in a furnace and hammered it into this state. But in fact, because Long Sun's physical body was too strong, the treasured spear went through his head and came out of his left eye, and it was destroyed. Seeing this scene, the group of demons immediately burst into cheers. They were not cheering for the evil lord being severely injured, but for the treasured spear to be lost again. As expected, Li Yunxin held it in his hand, swept it slightly and then threw it far away. This thing buzzed as it landed in the distance, attracting a swarm of demons to swarm towards it. His heroism made even Bai Yunxin's heart ache. She frowned and said to the evil lord, This thing, he lost it. Even if he brought out all the treasures in Cloud Mountain he shouldn't have. But the evil lord only looked at Li Yunxin's figure. He must have his reasons for doing this. Let's wait and see. In fact, his expression was slightly shocked. In this world, from ancient times until now, probably no one had ever seen a person with so many treasures on him. If the 2 Cloud Mountain sages brought all of these with them when they came out of the mountain, the demons would have a huge headache. Lao Ai's brain was severely injured, but he seemed to be fine. He was the most unusual one among the Dragon Sun. He was said to have been comprehending Tao in Crimson Cloud Palace. The move he had used earlier was very powerful. But everyone knew that it shouldn't be that powerful. The 5th son of the Dragon Sun at his peak should be much stronger than he was now, right? Right at this moment, a treasured sword appeared in Li Yunxin's hand. This treasured sword looked very different from the previous 2 weapons. The previous 2 weapons were bright and shiny, and looked very exaggerated. With one look, one could tell that they must be extraordinary and they were rare immortal treasures. However, this sword indeed looked like a piece of scrap metal. The body of the sword was full of rust, and there was no light to speak of. It looked like an iron sword that had been soaked in muddy water for a year and a half. It was so rusty that it would break at a touch. The demons were surprised to see him take out this thing. It seemed like Li Yunxin was also surprised. He did not expect that he would casually take out this thing. But at this moment, Lao Ai seemed to realize that if he did not use his full strength today, he would not be able to leave here alive. So he shouted, Good, good, good. You forced me to do this. As soon as he said that, his real body quickly dissipated and shrunk, revealing his godly body. Logically, his real body could not withstand Li Yunxin's treasures. This godly body would only be more badly injured. But seeing this, the evil lord frowned and said in a low voice, Strange. Not only did the evil lord think it was strange, even Li Yunxin felt it was strange. Because the godly body of the Tao Lord looked a little familiar. Actually, it was normal that it looked familiar. It was a form between a real body and a human form. But now, the godly body of the Tao Lord did not look like the Lao Ai at all. His body was covered with pale green armor instead of scales. Large pieces of exoskeleton wrapped around him, as if they were forged from black iron. They shone with a cold light in the fire. There were fierce and sharp bone spurs on the exoskeleton, like thistles and thorns, reaching high into the sky. Every time he breathed, a fiery red mist would rise from the gaps of the armor, causing the air within a few feet around him to distort because of the heat. This appearance was familiar to everyone in the array today. It was very similar to the 2 scary skeletons. Li Yunxin immediately frowned and stared at him. What are you? The Tao Lord spoke in a low and hoarse voice, as if metal was squeezing against each other. He said, Ever since I cultivated this crimson firmament Dharma body, I have never shown it in front of others. You are the one who is seeking death today, forcing me to show it. Li Yunxin, today I will sacrifice your life to it. After he said this, his arms suddenly sank. With his terrifying body as the center, the fire within a few miles was extinguished. It was as if he had absorbed all the heat and light, leaving only coldness and darkness in the world. Previously he had used his real body to spit fire and burn two demon kings who could not dodge in time to ashes. Therefore the group of demons had retreated a lot so that they would not be affected. Who would have thought that the Tao Lord would use this technique again? As the flames were extinguished, the monster kings who were caught up in the shockwaves of the Tao Lord's power began to fall from the skies like dumplings, baring their fangs and brandishing their claws. Not only did he look shockingly similar to the skeletons, but his ability was also similar. He had forbidden these demon kings from using their supernatural powers. Seeing this, the Tao Lord immediately laughed strangely. Ah! Li Yunxin, let's see what you can do to me with that broken metal. Chapter 564. In the time it took to say that, the Tao Lord pounced towards Li Yunxin. As he moved, the restrictions surrounding him also moved, enveloping many demon kings within them. In the end, those unlucky fellows also fell into the sea of fire one by one, presumably in a flurry. Li Yunxin seems to be surprised to see him like this. She doesn't attack but retreats. Stepping on the auspicious cloud, she walks hundreds of feet away. It seems that she wants to figure out his situation first. At this moment the evil lord flicked his wrist, which was hidden in his black sleeves, and shot out a sharp demonic power. However, as soon as her monster power enters the inhibition of the Lord of Tao, it disappears immediately. The situation is exactly the same as when she fought with the skeleton. The previous scene is not a camouflage but a powerful inhibition. This inhibition is different from all the supernatural powers that the Lord of Tao knows. Even people from Daotong and Kenzo can't do anything about it. Where did the Lord of Tao learn the skills of the skeleton? Why does he only use it now? However, these thoughts only appear in her mind for a second. The evil lord immediately pulls Bai Yunxin back. He also says to the ninth young master who is standing beside them and staring at Li Yunxin, "Step back." It's weird. Human feelings are different in the human world, so is the world of demons. The dragon Jiuqi Kiss used to have low personal ability and was controlled by the old lord of Dongting. Therefore his brothers and sisters didn't want to associate with him. Whether they looked down on him or not, it's more because of the Lord Dongting. The Lord Dongting has high personal ability and has been operating in Dongting for a long time. It's not appropriate for others to peep into his territory when they have nothing to do. Therefore the relationship between the evil lord and the ninth younger brother is actually very indifferent. Now the evil lord also reminds him. Maybe it's because she once regarded Li Yunxin as her ninth younger brother, so she loves him because of him. However, the ninth young master doesn't leave immediately. He hesitates for a while. The evil lord sees the eagerness in his eyes. She had rarely seen this kind of light in a demon's eyes. It meant that he was eager to try, it meant that he had an infinite longing for this world, and it even meant that he had some wild ambitions. She understood immediately after thinking about it. Her ninth brother used to be depressed and had a low cultivation base. If it was an ordinary fiendish demon it would have been fine. However, it just had to be Long Sun. The huge contrast would inevitably leave an indelible mark in his heart and bring about many problems. Now, because of Li Yunxin, he possessed power that he had never dared to imagine before. Naturally, he was eager to try. It was like a swordsman obtaining a treasured sword, or a saber user obtaining a treasured saber. When a child learning to write gets a new notebook, they will want to try it out immediately. Bai Yunxin snorted, "Little Nine Dragon, don't ask for trouble. I'm afraid that even Li Yunxin will have to spend a lot of effort to deal with him. Don't give him more trouble." The ninth young master suddenly turned around and stared at Bai Yunxin. For a moment, his face showed a terrible and ferocious expression, which made him look extremely ferocious. But soon, his expression turned into pure anger. It seemed that when he saw Bai Yunxin he realized he had reached the peak of the true realm. However, Bai Yunxin had gone one step further and was also in the mysterious realm. Between them there was an insurmountable gap. It was really unlucky. Seeing his expression, Bai Yunxin also stared at him and showed a fierce expression. "Well, little Nine Dragon, I haven't seen you for a month or two, but you have improved a lot. Have you forgotten the time when you were chased by me?" The ninth young master's face showed an embarrassed expression. He snorted and snorted again and again, then said bitterly, "I saved his life. Twice, thrice." As he said so, he slowly retreated. At this time, the Lord Taoist had already fought with Li Yunxin. Previously, the Lord Taoist used his Tao and divine powers, and Li Yunxin used his treasured armor to fight with him. But now the situation was reversed. The Lord Taoist used his terrifying armor to pounce on Li Yunxin. Li Yunxin was also afraid of the restrictive spell and moved away from him. After all, the Lord Taoist had many magic treasures and methods. but when the needles shot out from his palm, they were full of vigor. But once they flew into the Lord Taoist's restrictive spell, they immediately lost their brilliance and became ordinary objects. These things couldn't hurt the Lord Taoist's sturdy armor at all. He reached out his hand and casually touched his body to catch the magic treasures. Then, like Li Yunxin, he sprinkled the magic treasures on the ground and shouted, "You want these things? Wait until I kill him. Ah, I can have them as I please." His laughter at this time seemed to be crazy. It seemed that becoming like this had also affected his mind, so he lost his previous sinister but rational and cautious appearance and completely became a madman. The divine powers that Li Yunxin's magic treasures released were useless against him, but the Lord Taoist couldn't catch up to Li Yunxin, who was on the auspicious cloud. As a result, this new round of battle became tedious and boring after experiencing an imposing aura that caused everyone in the arena to feel insecure. To the demons, it wasn't even as interesting as when the Lord Taoist was chased by Li Yunxin. At least at that time, Li Yunxin would leave behind many broken magic treasures. But now what the Lord Taoist left behind were all intact. They weren't something that the numerous low-level demon kings and demon generals could covet. Just like that, the 15 minutes of battle passed quickly. The Lord Taoist began to become more and more angry. He let out a crazy roar, but Li Yunxin moved more and more calmly, as if he had slowly figured out his methods and was thinking of new ways. Thus, no one realized that there was actually another person nearby. It was a genuine person, and a her at that. It was about 10 li away from where Li Yunxin and the Lord Taoist were fighting. Looking from here, even the light of the fire had become indistinct, and the group of demons was just a mass of black mist. A woman stood in the shadow of a short tree, her figure blending into the darkness. Her breathing was very slow, almost non-existent. Her eyes were very bright as she focused 10 li away. It was as if she didn't need anything to see the situation there. Even a great demon like the Fiend Lord, whose cultivation was almost at the peak of the Xian realm, didn't sense her existence. After watching for a while, she finally moved. She first closed her eyes slightly and thought quietly as if considering something. Then she opened her mouth and sighed lightly. "Ah, he isn't the person we're looking for. Master, are you sure?" So, she wasn't the only person in the shadow of the short tree. There was also a man standing behind her. Speaking of this man, Li Yunxin should be familiar with him. He had met him twice before. Once in the city of Wei in the kingdom of Qing and the other in Rong in the kingdom of Yu. It was none other than shopkeeper Wang of Munanju. In Rong in the kingdom of Yu, he had contacted Li Yunxin and said a lot. The woman didn't speak. She just closed her eyes again as if calculating something. Shopkeeper Wang waited quietly for 3 breaths. Seeing that his mistress hadn't spoken, he lowered his voice and slowly said, "But there shouldn't be anyone more suitable than him. When we were in Little Rock, we said he wouldn't be able to survive the battle of the Marquises. But now, not only is he alive, he's turned his situation around. Before he was besieged on all sides. Now he's become a vassal and has won over a few powerful allies. Although we've helped a bit, in the end, it's still him who has some shocking abilities." Speaking to this point, he carefully looked at the woman's expression. Seeing that she wasn't unhappy, he continued, "What is the master not satisfied with? From the moment he stepped out of that mountain village, we've been watching him and testing him. I've never seen anyone who could make the master spend so much effort. These days, for him, we've mobilized a lot of manpower and resources. But," shopkeeper Wang sighed. "The person the master is looking for, what does he look like?" The woman still stood there for a long time. Then she let out a light breath and took a step forward. Thus she walked out of the shadows. Her appearance was illuminated by the light from the sky and the fire in the distance. This was an extremely shocking beauty. It was almost difficult to describe with words. It was Taoist Qing Shui who had lived in the capital of the Qing kingdom. "How could I not know what you're talking about? Using extremely secretive methods to change the direction of the world. Involving him in the test and making sure that a smart person like him wouldn't see through it and that he wouldn't really die. This kind of difficulty is also very difficult for me." Speaking to this point, she raised her hand. She stretched out a slender finger in the dim light and seemed to be stirring something aimlessly. Then she sighed softly. "I thought that he had forgotten many things, but now it seems that he really doesn't know. Now he's afraid of this Lord of Taoism. Perhaps he really isn't the person I'm looking for. But since you think so highly of him, give him one last chance." Listening to her tone, it seemed that she had given Li Yunxin many tests and many chances. However, Li Yunxin failed again and again. Thus, at this moment, this beautiful Taoist Qing Shui had lost hope and confidence in him. Shopkeeper Wang still wanted to say something, but Taoist Qing Shui's finger had already hooked. But I'm afraid you're going to be disappointed. Just wait and see. After saying this, she turned and walked into the distance. It looked like she was about to leave. At the same time, Li Yunxin, who had been cautiously keeping a distance from the Lord of Taoism and wandering around to find an opportunity, suddenly froze. It wasn't his problem. It seemed to be the problem of this world. The spiritual power was suddenly cut off for a moment. The spiritual power between heaven and earth and the bodies of demons and cultivators were inextricably linked. Even when he used the heaven and earth mother plate to disturb the chi of this place, the connection was not broken. It just became chaotic. But right now, at that moment, it was as if the world became a vacuum, all the spiritual power disappeared or was isolated from his body for a moment. This became some kind of terrible pressure. The spiritual power in his body tried to gush out and dissipate between heaven and earth. This moment was extremely short, so short that it didn't cause any substantial effect on his body. But one should know that he was fighting with the Lord of Taoism now. The speed of the two of them running in the sky was extremely fast. At the moment when his body was slightly stiff, the terrible restriction of the Lord of Taoism had already enveloped him. At this moment, the auspicious cloud that originally gathered beneath his feet, allowing his movements to become even more nimble, suddenly scattered, becoming the most ordinary mist. Some magic treasures that were hovering around him and providing him with enchantment protection fell one after another, like a flock of birds that died in an instant. Li Yunxin's body lost its support and suddenly began to fall. Seeing this scene, the demons almost exclaimed at the same time. This exclamation was not because he sympathized with or loved Li Yunxin. She was just surprised at why he had suddenly stopped in his tracks, ruining the good situation and seeking his own death. Bai Yunxin grabbed the evil lord's hand and shouted, "Lord!" The evil lord was also puzzled. But at this moment, it was too late to say anything. The Lord of Taoism let out a series of terrible laughter and flew towards Li Yunxin. The distance between the two of them was not too far. Now, it was only a moment before he reached Li Yunxin, in the sky, above the fire. The Lord of Taoism stretched out his bony claws and went straight for Li Yunxin's heart. Li Yunxin was below him, looking up at him, still holding the rusty sword in his hand. It seemed that because he had lost the supernatural power of waving the air, his limbs were not agile and he couldn't fight back for a moment. Bai Yunxin screamed in horror. The ninth young master was also shocked. Shopkeeper Wang, who was watching from the shadows 10 miles away, was equally shocked. But he was not looking at them with his naked eyes. He was holding a long cylinder in his hand. Li Yunxin could tell that it was a pair of binoculars. The workmanship was rough and it was the style of this world. Maybe it was made by the skilled craftsman in Munenju. But no matter what, the effect was surprisingly good. Shopkeeper Wang saw everything and said in a low voice. But Daoist Qing Shui didn't turn around. It was as if he already knew the situation. He took another 2 steps and said, "You have seen it. Let's go. The person we are looking for will not die here. We have wasted so much time and we have to start from the beginning." Then he heard Shopkeeper Wang's voice, "Master, you mean, if he is not dead?" Daoist Qing Shui stopped. After a moment of silence, he turned around and frowned slightly. He saw Shopkeeper Wang's eyes wide open and pointing to a distance. "Then, Master? He is the person we are looking for." When Daoist Qing Shui looked 10 miles away, he saw such a scene. The Daoist Qing Shui was pouncing down like an eagle. The sharp nails of his ferocious claws were touching Li Yunxin's chest. If he exerted a little more force, the claws would sink into his flesh and pierce through his heart. Li Yunxin, on the other hand, was descending with a rusted sword in her hand. However, the moment when the demons, Bai Yunxin, the 9th young master, and even Shopkeeper Wang couldn't help but gasp, it did not end as quickly as they thought. In fact, it lasted for 3 whole breaths. The Daoist Qing Shui was falling down at the same speed as the Daoist Qing Shui. The Daoist Qing Shui was about to succeed, but there was still a little distance between them. After a while, only then did everyone realize that Li Yunxin was actually flying backwards as well. The treasures under his feet and the treasures around him all lost their powers and fell down, but he didn't. That seemed to be the case. After a full 3 breaths, the Tao Lord and Li Yunxin realized this. Li Yunxin herself was rather surprised, and both of them were stunned at the same time. The situation was very awkward. The next moment, the Daoist Qing Shui screamed and jumped back. "How can this be?" Li Yunxin seemed to have just realized it and stabbed with his sword. "There are many things that you can't imagine. Watch my sword." Chapter 565. At this time, Li Yunxin's treasured armor and sword had already lost the magical properties bestowed upon them by Taoism. They had become the most ordinary weapons. They might even be less suitable than the swords and armors worn by the people of Jianghu. The people of Jianghu used steel swords and armor. They didn't have any magical abilities to rely on, so they focused on the most basic properties. Folding and forging were the highest goals pursued by the craftsmen of the Jianghu. However, when cultivators refined magic treasures, they might do the opposite. Perhaps some weapons and armors were made of materials that were sharper and stronger than those of the Jianghu, but others, such as the armor Li Yunxin was wearing, were mainly made of soft copper, tin, and gold. These materials, along with other natural treasures, were the most effective in forming a formation. Once the formation was formed, the magical abilities attached to it might allow the armor to withstand the attacks of a battering ram or the attacks of a profound realm demon. Then it naturally didn't matter what material was used. Thus, under the Taoist lord's restriction, the awe-inspiring armor on his body became like chicken ribs. Li Yunxin knew this. Therefore, as he thrust the sword forward, he was ready in his palms. As soon as the rusty thing broke, he would shatter the useless armor he wore, throw away the weapon, which was inexplicably and surely broken, and take out another that would be of use. His strike was crafty and sudden. Even if the Taoist lord wanted to dodge, he couldn't. One must know that Li Yunxin had put an effort on the path of swordsmanship. Although he wasn't as brilliant as a Kenzo disciple, and couldn't compare to the top experts of Jianghu, but with his strong control over his muscles, he could improve a lot with just a little practice. However, this Taoist lord was a demon, born with magical abilities and a tyrannical body. Why would he learn some *T swordsmanship? At this time he would be at a great disadvantage in a hand-to-hand fight. Li Yunxin's sword first went for his ribs, then changed direction midway to stab his face. When he dodged to the side, it unexpectedly stabbed his neck like a ghost. When had the Taoist lord ever fought with someone like this? So, he decided not to dodge, and instead he relied on his sturdy outer armor to take the attack head-on. The rusted sword, which should have been shattered, cut through his outer armor without any hindrance and pierced into his neck. About a third of the blade had pierced into the Taoist monarch's shoulder blade, revealing the tip of the sword through the ferocious bone spur under the Taoist monarch's shoulder blade. The immense and terrifying pain caused the Tao Lord to be momentarily unable to cry out. But he was even more astonished. Just like Li Yunxin, he had never thought that the sword could be so sharp. The two clashed in an instant. In the next moment, Li Yunxin exerted force and slashed the sword out of the Tao Lord's body, chopping off one of his arms. Then he looked at the sword in his hand in surprise. However, its appearance had changed. It used to be stained with rust. Now all the rust had disappeared. It seemed that when the sword was stabbed into the Tao Lord's body, Long Sun's tough muscles and armor scraped off the rust, revealing the sword beneath. However, the sword did not radiate a cold light. This did not mean that it was not bright. In fact, the sword was as bright and smooth as a mirror. It was just that it was restrained and not ostentatious. All the light was restrained in the blade and did not radiate outwards at all. If one had to describe it, it should be said that it seemed to be made of solidified light. At this time, Li Yunxin finally remembered what it was. When he was trapped on Little Cloud Mountain, he had seen Su Yusong and Zhuomuzha in the study of the art saint. The fake sword saint had held a sword in his hand, a strange long sword with a rusty surface. It seemed that she had placed the sword on Cloud Mountain and collected it along with the treasures in the Palace of Universe. However, it was useless to think about it now. After such a brief shock, he pounced on it again and shouted, "How about this sword? Take another one." The Tao Lord finally realized the power of this treasure. He turned around and fled again. It was just a few short breaths. The Tao Lord who had just been awe-inspiring became a stray dog who fled in panic. However, this time it was easier for him to escape than the last time. This was because Li Yunxin did not have any treasures to chase after him. The two of them chased each other in the sky. Soon they had traveled nearly 100 miles and finally left the group of demon kings behind. However, no one dared to go forward to watch the show. Both the Tao Lord and Li Yunxin were too strange. This was the first time the demon kings realized that the dragons were indeed unfathomable. There were too many secrets hidden in their bodies, and even the methods they used were unimaginable. However, they did not wait for long. About a dozen breaths later, when the Fiend Lord, Bai Yunxin, and the ninth young master decided to chase after them to see what was going on, a white light shone from the sky. Li Yunxin appeared from the white light and returned to the sight of the demon kings. However, the white clothes he was wearing now seemed to have turned into golden clothes. That was the golden blood of the dragons. He held a head in his hand. The face was ferocious, but it was covered by the golden blood. He stood in the air and looked at the demon kings in silence and sternly. Then he raised his hand and threw the head down. I have killed one of Tao Wu's true bodies. That's its head. Well, he's lucky to have got away so fast. However, he can't escape either. After tonight, I will still find him and kill him. At this point, the Daelord's faint voice came from the sky. Kid, you can be arrogant for now. Li Yunxin raised the sword in his hand and pointed to the distance. Then come back and die. No one knew what the Daelord said, but the voice went further and further away and finally disappeared. He did not manage to kill the Daelord. However, it was reasonable. The two of them had similar cultivation levels and were both Dragon Son. Moreover, the Daelord was not seriously injured like hatred. At first, he did not have any weaknesses. Since he was a profound realm great demon and wanted to protect his own life, it would be very difficult to kill him if he did not have the right time in the right place. However, he was actually able to chase a profound realm Daelord to the point of fleeing and even kill an incarnation. Such terrifying combat ability was really shocking. Many demons were shocked. However, they were not the only ones who were shocked. In the shadow of a short tree 10 miles away, Daoist Qingshui frowned. Her eyes never left Li Yunxin. She had seen everything from him chasing the Daelord to him showing off his power in front of the demons. Therefore, she knew that he did not actually kill the Daelord's incarnation. He destroyed the Mother and Earth universe plate and the Cloud Mountain left the ground. As a result, the restriction on this battlefield was eliminated. Without the prohibition, the Daelord could escape very fast with his terrifying fiend god body. However, he had lost an arm. If Li Yunxin wanted to chase him, he could catch up with him. However, it might take a few hours or a few days. Now that the demons here were thinking about him, he could not just leave like this. Therefore, he decisively stopped, drew ahead and brought it back to deceive others. This was indeed his usual style. He thought that the Daelord could not wait to escape. Naturally, he would not come back to confront him. Seeing this, Daoist Qingshui seemed to be talking to himself and also to Manager Wang. How could it be? Daoist Qingshui seemed to have a unique way of distinguishing between Li Yunxin's, that person, and not that person. But what exactly was this way even Manager Wang did not know. But at least tonight, he knew that the situation was a little strange in his master's eyes. Li Yunxin did not pass any of the previous tests. So he was disappointed with him and planned to abandon him. Unexpectedly, he passed the final and decisive test, and did not die. Manager Wang did not know what the prohibition on the fiend god body of the Daelord meant. But he knew that Li Yunxin could not be affected by the prohibition. This ability was very important to his master. Therefore, his master who was always calm and decisive also became hesitant. He thought for a while and said in a low voice, Master, since it is not decided yet, why not go back first and think about it? Daoist Qingshui thought for a while in the dark and said, Summon him. Look at Li Yunxin. Manager Wang was slightly stunned. Master, you mean? Yes. Thus, this capable assistant, Moon Anju, the big shopkeeper of Yu country and Qing country, was stunned for a while before saying, Master, this is not appropriate. He had followed Daoist Qingshui for many years and had always been respectful and cautious. It was rare to see him not carrying out an order and even doubting it. However, Daoist Qingshui did not show any change in his emotions. He only said, There is nothing inappropriate. You will think of it too. Summon him. Shopkeeper Wang sighed softly in the darkness. In the end, he put his hand into his sleeve. He did not know what method or item he used. After 3 breaths he said, He already knows. Thus, the two of them had nothing else to say. They stood quietly in the dark and looked at Li Yunxin who was 10 miles away. After about 2 breaths, the insects that had quietened down because of their previous conversation started to chirp again. They chirped for about 3 breaths and their voices suddenly became softer. A figure appeared silently in the dark behind Daoist Qingshui and said in a low voice, My lord. It was a male voice. He did not sound old and his voice could be said to be clear. When he spoke, there seemed to be no change in his emotions and he was very calm. However, this calmness was not like the calmness of a quiet lake, but like the deathly stillness of a bay of stagnant water. Daoist Qingshui did not turn around. Look at him again. The incomer raised his head to look at the situation 10 miles away. He only took a glance and said, This is Li Yunxin. You've been paying attention to him these days. Daoist Qingshui was silent for a while before saying, Then look at him now, is he the Li Yunxin from before? Ever since he entered Qinghe County he has not been. The incomer answered. A year ago. Daoist Qing said this and paused as if he was considering his words. You told me that he should not really know nothing. He is extremely good at hiding. I have observed him for many years before coming to this conclusion. The man saw that Daoist Qing paused after saying this and knew that my lord was communicating with him. So he said calmly, but without my lord's order, I cannot test him. Just because I have this thought in my heart, I continue to observe and feel that there are more and more flaws in him. You have not mentioned these details before. Jun Shang has a myriad of affairs to attend to. This subordinate only needs to present the conclusion. I do not dare to use too many details to take up my lord's time. Then tell me now. Yes. The man thought for a while. Actually, it is still a deduction. Li Yunxin hides very well, there are no flaws. The only suspicious thing is his temperament. He seems to be indifferent and aloof from worldly affairs, only interested in painting. But in reality he yearns for the outside world. This kind of yearning is very common in children, but he hides it again. He hides it very well, but not well enough. From this, I realize that there should be something else hidden in his heart. But this is only my deduction, there is no evidence. I said the same deduction a year ago, so I did not mention the details. Daoist Qing was silent for a while before saying, your deduction is correct. Li Yunxin is indeed different from others. Otherwise he would not have achieved what he has today. Then, the man said, is he really the person my lord is looking for? A quarter of an hour ago I thought not. But now I am not sure. She sighed softly. He is really a scary variable, we need to continue observing for a while. But he should know some things by now, we can't just be bystanders anymore. We need a suitable opportunity to tell him some things in a situation that he and we can both accept. As for now, Daoist Qing finally turned to look at the man. What I want to ask you is, when that time comes, are you willing to tell him those things? The man was silent. Daoist Qing smiled slightly. Why? Seeing his current state, are you afraid? The man moved his feet. After thinking for a while, he said in a low voice, no. On the contrary. I'm very happy for him. She should be happy too. Shopkeeper Wang and Daoist Qing who had been silent, looked at each other because of his words. Then shopkeeper Wang frowned. Didn't you already sever it? There was finally some change in the man's voice. But there seemed to be a hint of melancholy. It's always harder to do than to think. I don't want to sever it. These words seemed to have evoked something else in his heart. It was as if there was something at the bottom of the stagnant pool, floating to the surface again. He hesitated for a while. My lord, what do you want him to do? Daoist Qing clasped her hands behind her back and paced 2 steps in the shadows. I didn't want him to do anything at first. She said softly, at the same time slightly lowering her head as if she was thinking, I just wanted him to be a helper or a sacrifice. But then I found out that his condition was abnormal, I wanted to throw him away. But you insisted on observing him for a few more days, so I listened to you. Her words should have been directed to the man. So half a year ago I found out that he had something that surprised me, so I had high hopes for him. But half a year's time gave him a lot of choices. Although he dealt with all of them beautifully, none of them went according to my wishes. So I was disappointed again. At this point I can't make a rash decision. But at least I know that he might be a surprise. She turned to look at Li Yunxin and said softly, he might become the savior. If his heart is more ruthless than I thought. Chapter 566. Savior? Shopkeeper Wang and the man looked at each other. No one would have thought that their lord would use this term on Li Yunxin. He was indeed high-spirited and was considered one of the most powerful martial artists in the world. But to save the world, why? You will understand in the future. Daoist Qing looked at Li Yunxin again, turned and walked into the shadows. If you want to stay, then stay a little longer. Old Wang, let's go. Shopkeeper Wang immediately turned and followed. The man hesitated for a moment but did not move. He was looking at Li Yunxin. His face was hidden in the shadows, but his eyes were bright and piercing. He saw that after Li Yunxin threw away the Taoist lord's head, he stood quietly in the sky for a while and did not speak. After about 10 breaths, some of the monster kings started to leave. From the looks of it, he was not going to leave any more Dharma treasures behind. Moreover, these people were not friendly to Li Yunxin before, who was not afraid of being punished. Finally, the prohibition spell was gone. After the demon kings left, Li Yunxin only looked in the direction they went and didn't say anything. Therefore, more and more demons left in groups of 2s and 3s. In less than a quarter of an hour, most of the monster kings and monster generals had left. Some of them greeted the evil lord before they left. Some of them greeted Li Yunxin too. Some of them ignored both or only talked to the evil lord. In the end there were only about 300 demons left. More than 100 of them were the evil lord's vassals. The remaining 200 were small demons with low cultivation. They were about the peak of the transcendent state and the beginning of the true state. Perhaps in the wilderness he could be considered a demon king that ruled over a region, but tonight he was really not enough. The reason why they didn't leave was not that they wanted to stay. These unlucky guys had squeezed to the front when Li Yunxin was fighting with the Lord of Taoism, intending to take advantage of him. Now that they were under Li Yunxin's nose and silently watched by him, it was not good for them to leave. They could only bite the bullet and wait for the time being. If there was nothing else they would leave. Thus the battlefield slowly became deserted. More than 300 demons stood in the sky, a sea of raging flames below their feet. At this moment if someone were to look up, it would be very difficult to see their figures clearly. Because above them, there was still a huge cloud mountain that was moving away. Under the contrast of the cloud mountain, these people were like a handful of dust. When the first demon king was about to leave, Li Yunxin's expression became lively. He sighed. It seems like you are the only ones who are fated. He looked at the evil lord, Bai Yunxin, and the ninth young master. Now let's talk about something important. Without waiting for their reply, he turned around and shouted, Brother Ji, Brother Lu, come out. Thank you for backing me up. A burst of hearty laughter was heard. Before the person arrived, his voice could be heard, ha 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 ha, Brother Li is really awe-inspiring tonight. We've been watching for a whole night, but we couldn't help it all. This voice was powerful and contained a strong demonic power. Bai Yunxin, the ninth young master, and the other demons heard it and felt that his realm was unfathomable. When the evil lord heard it, he realized, this was the peak of the mystic realm. There were very few demons and cultivators in the mystic realm in the world. After this battle, it would be even rarer, not to mention the peak of the mystic realm. When he thought about how Li Yunxin addressed him as Brother Ji, he immediately knew that Li Yunxin was referring to the former emperor of the Li Kingdom, who became a ghost emperor in the peak of the mystic realm after his death. However, the moment he appeared in the world, he was chased by the Xianmen and was severely injured. Previously, when he appeared in the mountains, he was only around the mystic realm. Why did he return to the peak tonight? When this thought appeared in her mind, she looked at Li Yunxin. She saw Li Yunxin smile at her as if she could hear what she was thinking. Third sister guessed right. I took all the souls that Qionyou and hatred obtained by killing the heroes and cultivators in the world. But I'm not the kind of person they are. I wouldn't be able to sleep at night if I were to use this kind of underhanded means for my own benefit. He sighed bitterly and looked around at the many demons. So I divided a few of them to use. Most of them were given to third sister and brother Ji. Both of you are powerful cultivators in the peak of the mystic realm. You are a deterrent to the Xianmen in the human world. It will take a long time for you to recultivate after being seriously injured. I can't just sit back and do nothing. Some of them were given to the ninth young master. When he said this, he cupped his hands at the ninth young master and looked very serious. I used to have a grudge with the ninth young master, but now it's over. There are many things in the world and it's not easy to meet and know each other. I hope that there will be no disagreements between me and the Lord Tong Tian, and that we can be honest with each other. When he said these words, his tone was very sincere, and his expression was even more solemn. Anyone who saw it would feel that he was speaking the truth. Bai Yunxin blinked and looked at the ninth young master. No one knew what he was thinking. The ninth young master's reaction was interesting. At first he looked reserved. In fact, people would think that he didn't care about fiefs or titles. At least he didn't care very much. But when he heard what Li Yunxin said next, he looked a little embarrassed. It seemed that he didn't know how to deal with it. In the end, he didn't say anything. He just pursed his lips and looked at Li Yunxin. Finally, he raised his hand and cupped his hands at him, nodding silently. At this time, Emperor Li and Emperor Yi finally showed up. However, it wasn't just two of them but 4 people. Besides the 2 ghost emperors, there was a Taoist priest with 5 strands of long beard on the rolling black cloud. His hair was black and shiny. He looked about 40 or 50 years old. It was Lu Gongzan. Now he was full of spirit and seemed to have recovered. There was also a chicken spirit with a broken arm. But there seemed to be a small hand growing out of the broken arm. It was white and tender, the size of a palm. It looked very strange and gave people goosebumps. But it also meant that the serious injuries that almost killed him had recovered. The broken arm was even going to grow back. When the 4 of them showed up, Li Yunxin stood in front of the demons on the auspicious cloud. He talked with confidence and assurance. It was like he was the moon surrounded by the stars. Seeing this scene, they paused for a while and then went straight into the crowd of demons. Emperor Li's aura was majestic. The demons with low cultivation hurried to make way for them. They were like officials serving the emperor on a tour. Lu Gongzan and the chicken spirit bowed to Li Yunxin on the black cloud. Li Yunxin smiled and said, "I gave some to Brother Lu. When Brother Lu was in the city of Wei, he entrusted his life to me. We are friends. Since he used to be the emperor, I will help him reach the peak of the realm of truth. In the future he can go anywhere in the world." The Emperor Lu Qingyang bowed to Li Yunxin solemnly and said, "I will remember your kindness." The rest, Li Yunxin said calmly, "When you were fighting against Shenmen, I faked my death and escaped into Yunshan. I met with the guards in the mountain and had a big fight. Let's not talk about the result. But at least their evil plan failed. These Taoists planned to use the Heaven and Earth Mother Plate to kill you on the battlefield. The two skeletons that you saw suddenly rolled into the mountain and the chi dynamic in the battlefield was messed up. It was all because of the Taoists of Yunshan. At that time I was dealing with them while slowly seizing control over the treasure. Only then did I finally remove the restriction. I can't tell you the inside story. But when I was fighting with the Taoists of Shenmen, I got lucky and entered the realm of perfect harmony immortal. Then, I used the remaining demon power to break through the realm of mystery and achieved what I have now." Emperor Li said loudly, "That's right. Not only that, Brother Li can be called the first hero in the world. According to the demon power you said, that beautiful lady and I returned to the peak of the realm of mystery. If Brother Li took all of it, he would be more than the peak of the realm of mystery. I, Jilan, have never seen such a noble and broad-minded person in my life. As the saying goes, people carry people in the sedan chair." This powerful monster praised Li Yunxin so fiercely. The monsters who were trembling in fear also applauded. However, the evil spirit and Bai Yunxin both knew that Li Yunxin was lying. The skeletons rolling into the mountain, the inhibition, and the chi dynamic in the battlefield were all his tricks in Yunshan. But at this moment the evil spirit couldn't see through Li Yunxin anymore. What the Emperor Li said was the truth. If Li Yunxin used all the demon power for himself, he would be at the peak of the realm of mystery. But he was actually able to resist this terrifying temptation. She could guess what was on Li Yunxin's mind. So what if he was at the peak of the realm of mystery? The Zither Master, the evil spirit, and Emperor Li were all at the peak of the realm of mystery. Didn't they lose or get injured? This realm was very strong, but not so strong that he could be invincible in the world alone. After all, even saints could perish in such a situation. Between power and influence, Li Yunxin chose the former. He used this power to exchange for her not to be his enemy for the time being. They could even be considered as friends. And he also exchanged for the friendship of her silly ninth brother. From the hatred of life and death to today's reversal, Li Yunxin was really a demon who played with people's hearts. And he won the friendship of a ghost emperor at the peak of the realm of mystery and the peak of the realm of truth. And in the future, their words would be very influential among the monsters and demons. In the past, Li Yunxin was almost besieged by the whole world. But now, when he sent all these forces out, the situation was immediately reversed. He also gained powerful allies and help. Even if this support could only last for a short time, it should be enough for his intelligence. This was the vision of a true expert, to be able to endure the terrible temptation and see where the real benefits were. But, what is he going to do? The evil spirit said this in his heart. 5 kilometers away, the person hiding in the shadows was also muttering to himself. After saying this, he sighed. But it didn't sound like he was worried, but emotional. Now Li Yunxin looked the same as he did half a year ago. Half a year ago it was the end of spring, but now it was late autumn. His eyebrows didn't change, but his temperament changed greatly. Now he stood in the night sky, stepping on auspicious clouds, wearing a white robe, and holding a shining sword in his hand. His temperament was calm and he talked with confidence in the face of a group of scary monsters and demons. But among those monsters and demons there was Long Sun, his former enemies, the ghost cultivator that the emperor transformed into, and many other leaders who were entangled with other demon kings and demon generals. But now all these people were listening to him quietly. Maybe some of them were unwilling, maybe some of them had a lot of complaints. But they didn't dare to say anything. Actually, the word, control, was enough for him to do this much. In just half a year. The person in the shadows raised his head to look at the sky. The battle between the monsters and the cultivators had stirred up thick clouds in the sky. Then this place was surrounded by restrictive spells, and the thick clouds didn't dissipate. But now the restrictive spells disappeared, and the ground was on fire again. The clouds slowly dispersed, revealing the full moon behind it. But there was still a mysterious light in the sky that hadn't completely faded. The mysterious light covered the full moon with a faint blue color, looking very eerie and scary. But when this person looked up, his eyes seemed to be full of tenderness, and maybe a little sadness and regret. He looked at the blue moon for a while and sighed again. "If you see it, you should be happy." As soon as he said this, he heard a soft voice. "Hee hee, if you miss her so much, why did you do that kind of thing?" "A man. Oh my, he's so cool, oh my. He should give me a godly position." The person looked to his side. He saw a calico cat walking back and forth on the fallen leaves with its tail in the air. It squinted its eyes and also looked 10 miles away. He frowned. "You should stay with him." The calico cat turned around and crouched down. "Oh my, I can't. He's suspicious of me now. Hee, I don't know what to do." Sigh. No. I need to find someone. Oh my, I remember I lost something. Oh my, what is it?" She began to roll around as she spoke. The person didn't pay attention to her anymore. He looked at Li Yunxin one more time, then turned around to leave. But in the blink of an eye, he didn't know if it was an illusion. He felt that Li Yunxin, who was 10 miles away, also glanced in his direction. His gaze paused for a breath's time. The man wanted to dodge, but it was too late. He raised his head and looked at Li Yunxin, but Li Yunxin's gaze had already moved away. The man didn't know if Li Yunxin was really looking in their direction just now, or if he was glancing at the demons when he was talking, and his gaze paused on a demon for a while. After the evil lord and the man had the question, "What is he going to do?" Li Yunxin was silent for a while. Then he looked around at the demons and lowered his voice. "Many people are at the turning point of history, but they don't know it. They have to wait for many years to come to their senses and sigh about why they didn't grasp the opportunity firmly in the beginning." Li Yunxin suddenly changed his tone. He said these words slowly and paused for a while, as if he wanted to deepen their impression. Then he said, "I left everyone here today so that you won't have such regrets." He raised his hand and pointed at the demons who were left behind by his gaze and were now confused. "You are witnessing the birth of a little demon guardian. Congratulations on becoming a part of history." The big demons looked at each other. Lu Gongzan and Shanji showed a mysterious smile on their faces. The demons with low cultivation were even more confused. They didn't know whether little demon guardian was a new way of cursing people or Li Yunxin was joking with a disgusting name. But after all, they knew, according to their past experience, when the big demons looked for them and asked them to do something with a smile, it was usually not a good thing. If it was a light case, they would lose their cave abode's offerings. If it was a heavy case, they would lose their lives. The demon king, who had the highest cultivation among the demons and could barely be considered as a perfected person, plucked up his courage, cupped his fists and apologized. "Dragon King above. We all know Dragon King's good intention. But we have no abilities and are all vulgar people who have never seen the world. Now that we are lucky to be alive, we are already very grateful for Dragon King's forgiveness. But I'm afraid, we can't be driven by Dragon King and we won't be of much use." Li Yunxin smiled kindly and interrupted him. "It's exactly what we need, people like you who can't do well and have no abilities. Otherwise, why is it called the Little Demon Protection Association?" Chapter 567. The Little Monsters Protection Association. The monsters were stunned when they heard the name. These guys were not very cultured and didn't have the ability to understand. They looked at each other in confusion. Li Yunxin had expected this reaction. He waved his hand and said, "I know you don't understand. The night is still long, let me explain it to you. You have to know, the world is not the same as it used to be. You all know this, but you probably haven't experienced it yet. It doesn't matter. You will feel the change soon. But before that, there are some things you should think about. For example, in the future, when you demons walk around the world without the cultivators of the celestial sect looking for trouble with you, what do you plan to do?" These monsters had been busy trying to get the treasures and save their lives. They didn't have time to think about the question Li Yunxin asked. But now they realized that it was indeed a question they should think about and face. Actually, it wasn't a question. It wasn't a question to these monsters, it meant, we have to go to the ancestral hall and eat all the fruits. The first one to speak was a monster with a slender body. There was hair on the back of his hands and face. Maybe he was like the monster king under hatred, Lord Rinjun. They were both monkeys. But this one's cultivation was far from that of a Lord Rinjun. He had just reached the transcendent state. To be able to survive these successive catastrophes, It could be said that he was very lucky. He was laughed at as soon as he said it. They laughed at his lack of ambition. He also felt ashamed. He scratched his head and said, "We have to eat the fruits, we have to stay in the ancestral hall. Oh, we have to ask the villagers to come and offer offerings every day." Hearing this, the demons laughed even harder and the atmosphere eased up a little. Another monster king at the peak of the transcendent state mocked him, "You little monkey, you only have the ambition of a needle tip. Didn't you hear what Lord Wei said? The Xianmen have been destroyed, the world is ours. Why would you eat the fruits and sleep in the ancestral hall?" If it were me, He didn't know what kind of monster he was. He was round and plump. Although he had a human face, his eyes were slender, and he looked like a charmingly naive bear. "My current abode is next to the Qin Kingdom's Feng County. When I get back, I'll go to the government office and eat that old bastard up. That old bastard invited a few Kenzo swordsmen to cause trouble for me. Fortunately, I'm lucky. Then replace his yamen with my abode of Immortals Cave. Tell all the children in my cave to enter the city. Let's have a feast for 3 days first." There were thousands of people in Fengqing County. If they were all captured and locked up, they would be able to eat for a year and a half. After eating Feng County, I'll eat Luoyang County, and after eating Luoyang County, I'll eat Dingqing. Ayaya. The true bodies of the demons were different, so their interests and personalities varied greatly. However, there was one thing that was surprisingly consistent: their love for human flesh and blood. Not all demons liked to eat humans. There were also some who didn't like to eat it and only liked to use it. But most of them still loved the unique taste of the human body. Perhaps this kind of feeling did not exist. Perhaps what they loved was just a feeling that was hard to come by, a feeling of helplessness and fear in others. But in the end, the rarer something was, the more precious it was. The shark fins in the goblets of high officials and nobles, without the carefully cooked soup and water, would there really be any special taste? Demons transformed into human form in order to continue their cultivation. They also believed in the principle of form to form, and eating humans could make their skills more refined. From the demons' point of view, there was not much difference between them and those who ate hot kidney to strengthen their foundation. The Monster King's description of the future resonated with a large number of people. Before, they were left behind by Li Yunxin and did not know whether it was a blessing or a disaster. Now that they were slightly relieved and talked about this kind of topic, it was probably equivalent to a group of men in the secular world talking about women. For a moment, everyone expressed their opinions and the atmosphere was very lively. Li Yunxin smiled and watched them talk about these things without saying a word. After a full quarter of an hour, the noise gradually subsided. These demons had low cultivation, so they were naturally timid. Their ability to observe people's words and expressions was also better than that of the Monster King. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to live to this day. Then they thought of something. It was said that this Wei River Lord used to be a human. Now they talked about how to eat humans in front of Wei River Lord. Wasn't it like an old man eating arsenic, tired of living? Thinking of this, cold sweat oozed out of their foreheads, and they did not dare to say a word. After waiting for them to fall silent, Li Yunxin smiled again. "I didn't know that you could eat humans in so many different ways." The demons felt a chill in their hearts, knowing that they were in trouble. Unexpectedly, this Wei River Dragon King said again, "But in my opinion, your style is not exquisite enough. When ordinary people in the secular world talk about food, it is nothing more than meat and fish. Jiggling, oily slices of fatty meat, they found it satisfying in their mouths, but the nobles only felt sick of it. You are the same. Speaking of eating humans, I know 2 people who are good at it. Not only do you eat different people separately, you also eat different parts of them separately. You also have to pay attention to the heat, mood, weather." When he said this, he glanced at the 9th young master. "Compared to them, you are like eating raw meat and drinking blood. Moreover, you probably won't be able to eat raw meat and drinking blood for long." His gaze turned cold and he said in a deep voice, "You were originally guarding in the forest. When you were free to kidnap a person, you would tremble with fear, afraid that a Taoist or a swordsman would come looking for trouble. Now that the restrictions are gone, they're completely unbridled, and they've thought of how they're going to do whatever they want." The greater demon kings with higher cultivation bases who left earlier were probably 10 or even 100 times more resentful and depressed than you are. You want to eat a village or a town, but they probably want to massacre the city for fun. You have seen the situation on the battlefield these few days. When the great demon kings use their divine abilities, how terrifying is their power. After that, the world will be empty, and the great demon kings will fight for territory. I am afraid that thousands of people will die in the blink of an eye. If they destroy a few cities every now and then, the human dynasty will soon collapse. The order will collapse, and the great demon kings will rise together with bandits and refugees. War will burn the sky and no one will work, so there will be a terrible famine. If there is a famine, if the weather is good, then it would be fine. But the Midland is a vast place, and many places in the Midland have to rely on those spirit creatures for their power. You don't know this. You only think that sprinkling some rain from the sky every now and then to trick people to worship you is nothing. But in fact, many small demon kings have done this, and they have become a part of the natural ecology of this world. Li Yunxin sighed and said, I messed up the natural power of the world with the heaven and earth Mother Earth plate, but it is not a disaster. The death of all the cultivators in the Taoist sect is not a disaster. The real disaster is that almost all the great demon kings have died. Have you ever thought about this? The group of spirit creatures remained silent, looking at each other again. Of course they had never thought about this. Even the evil king, the ninth young master, Emperor Li, and Emperor Yi hadn't thought about this. Even in the world where Li Yunxin came from, the theory of ecological system had only existed for about 100 years, not to mention in this world. There was no problem of overdevelopment in this world. Therefore he didn't expect them to be enlightened after listening to his words. However, after Li Yunxin said so much and paused for a while, he glanced at the group of spirit creatures. Still none of them spoke. They remained silent, with their own thoughts in their minds. Seeing this, Jihao sighed in his head and looked at Lu Gongzan. He didn't need to say it. He didn't even need to give him a wink. Lu Laodao said immediately, after listening to what Dragon King said, I am enlightened. But, what does this have to do with the Little Demons Protection Association that Dragon King mentioned? Li Yunxin sighed and said, people only look at the strong, but few people realize that the root of this world is the weak. For example, if there weren't many little demons living by the lake or in the temple in the forest, pretending to be holy, bringing rain and clouds to bless the people, there wouldn't be such a good era. It's the same. If there aren't many ordinary people in this world, how can you look like a human, wear clothes and enjoy good food? If demons are allowed to run wild in the world, they will soon disappear. Then there will only be mountains and beasts left in the world. Before, you can still admire the prosperity of the human world and secretly taste some meat. By then, you can only live in the wilderness with those idiots in your cave abodes. Is that the life you want? The group of spirit creatures thought for a while and immediately shook their heads. No. Think about it. In the future, when the big spirit creatures fight for the world, it will be like this. They will drive many spirit creatures to open the way for them and fight for them. Most of you will die, and in the end, the spirit creature kings will reap the benefits. By then, you won't even be able to live in seclusion in the mountains. Is that the life you want? The group of spirit creatures said again, No. Li Yunxin clapped his hands and laughed. So, since we are of the same mind, old Lu, tell them about this little demon protection. After saying that, he waved his hand and Lu Gongzan was immediately pulled to his cloud. The group of spirit creatures looked at him with a strange expression. After all, he was the only person present. Now he was talking about the little demon protection among the spirit creatures. It was very strange. Although he didn't know what this Lu Gongzan was thinking, he was someone who walked in the Jianghu. It was a necessary skill for him to talk to people and talk to ghosts. In terms of eloquence, he was much better than these stupid spirit creatures. He stood in front of the group of spirit creatures and cupped his hands. There wasn't even the slightest bit of panic on his face. Instead, he showed a humble smile and said, Greetings everyone. Our Little Demon Protection Association, or Little Demon Protection for short, is mainly to protect the interests of all spirit creatures. Among the countries in the Midland, there are many spirit creatures who become human beings every year. There are many of them, but their living conditions are worrying. One problem is that the habitats they rely on for survival are destroyed. They are often swallowed by the big spirit creatures. Another problem is that they have natural enemies. The nearby spirit creature kings and spirit creature generals don't want to see another competitor next to them. So, once they find the spirit creature, they will immediately, destroy it to ensure that they don't have to worry about it. I stumbled and gained some cultivation experience, and now I have some power to protect myself. Either they are recruited by the spirit creature kings to become spirit creatures, or they die in a battle, or they are killed by some Taoist priests or swordsmen passing by. It's simply too difficult to survive and achieve what you have today like all of you. At this point, Lu Gongzan sighed. Just as we are talking, How many spirit creatures have been born, and how many spirit creatures have died? Just thinking about it and looking at the data, I feel shocked. The protection of the spirit creatures, especially now, is already of the utmost urgency. What is the main purpose of our association? He coughed. The main purpose is to regulate the behavior and habits of us spirit creatures through some rules and regulations. Through this method we gain a strong sense of unity. We recognize each other, help each other, fight for our own rights, and contribute to the stability and prosperity of this world. The group of spirit creatures was confused. They felt that he had said a lot, but he didn't say anything. Li Yunxin applauded. Well said, old Lu. One of the smarter spirit creatures thought for a while and vaguely felt that it was a good idea, but he couldn't make up his mind. He said loudly, "Hey, this person, what benefits do we get?" Lu Gongzan said with a straight face, "The benefits are endless. I'll just choose a few. First, you people are fortunate enough to witness the birth of spirit creatures today. You are like-minded people like me and the Dragon King. From now on we are comrades. Since we are comrades, we can stay by the Dragon King's side for a long time. Now that chaos is about to arrive, staying by the Dragon King's side can ensure your safety. Isn't that a great benefit?" The spirit creatures were stunned. The first benefit was that they understood what he was saying. In fact, he wanted them to become Lord Wei River's spirit creatures and spirit creatures. They had to abandon their former territories and run to Lord Wei River's territory. But many of them were self-proclaimed kings in the past, so they didn't feel constrained. But now, looking at Lord Wei River Li Yunxin behind Lu Gongzan, he was lightly flicking his finger on the blade of his sword while looking at them sinisterly. Who dared to jump out and say, "Not good?" Lu Gongzan continued, "The second benefit is that once you enter this spirit creature sphere, you can't do as you please and eat people as you please. Instead, you have to do more good deeds in your territory and accumulate more merit. This way the population in your territory will flourish, and your cultivation will rise. Isn't that great? So, you have to know that the most loved and hated person in this world is a strict teacher. If I let you do as you please, you will only feel good for a while, but in the end you will end up dead. How tragic would that be? Now that you have met Lord Wei River, isn't it good for you to be a strict teacher?" The spirit creatures were in an uproar. What kind of **T benefit was this? They came all the way here to risk their lives to seek riches and fortune, to overthrow the Shenmen and enjoy the blood of the human world. Who knew that this spirit creature sphere was even more perverted than the Shenmen and actually wanted them to do more good deeds? There was no way he could tolerate this. Immediately, a spirit creature king shouted, **T. What kind of benefit is this? I don't want to serve you." Hearing this, Li Yunxin was shocked and shouted behind Lu Gongzan, "Aya! There's a fish that slipped through the net. What did you say? You're the accomplice of that rebellious Dao Lord?" The spirit creature king was stunned for a while before shouting, "What accomplice? I'm saying, how dare you slander Lord Shinryu?" Li Yunxin shouted, "There's no reason not to kill you today." As soon as he finished speaking, the sword in his hand shot out with a hum. They couldn't see how the sword light moved. They only felt a light breeze and the demon's body was split in half, falling into the sea of fire on the ground. Li Yunxin reached out to catch the sword that flew back to him and said, "An unpleasant interlude. What did anyone say?" The monsters immediately shook their heads and praised Lu Gongzan for the second benefit. At this moment they learned that Lord Wei River could turn hostile as easily as eating and drinking tea. There was no sign at all, so no one dared to mess with him again. Lu Gongzan happily stroked his beard and said, "As for the third benefit, it's..." Speaking of this, he looked at Li Yunxin. What he said before was mostly what they had discussed in Dongting Lake before, plus some of his improvisations. However, he knew Li Yunxin's mind. Now he said it casually and methodically, so Li Yunxin was very satisfied. But when he said more benefits, he hesitated. In fact, there were no benefits. Li Yunxin's creation of such a thing was built on the basis of ensuring that humanity would prosper and continue to have a future. To these fiendish demons, what else could they gain other than the power of faith and a high cultivation base? Chapter 568. At this time Li Yunxin said, "There are benefits to be gained." He stepped forward on the cloud and waved his hand. Immediately, a sword ray appeared in front of him. But when they looked closely they saw that it was not a ray but a real flying sword. 108 shining flying swords were lined up in the sky. Just looking at it made them feel cold. The demons stared at it. These guys did not have the guts to leave but stay because of Li Yunxin's gaze, because they were a bunch of useless trash. Maybe somewhere at the peak of transcendent state, somewhere at the beginning of true state. But cultivation level was not the only standard to measure one's strength. Some were timid, some were weak, some had weak techniques, some were weak, and so on. Therefore, when Li Yunxin fought with the Tao Lord, they did not get any benefits. Now that they saw Li Yunxin throw out these flying swords, their eyes widened. They forgot about their previous dissatisfaction. If the benefits that Wei River Lord was talking about were these flying swords, this was a proper, undamaged treasure. It was much better than the broken pieces and damaged toys from before. At this time, Li Yunxin said again, "Of course we can see the benefits. These 108 flying swords form a sword array. I will give them to you first." After saying this, he flipped his hand. The flying swords fell into the sea of fire. The demons rushed forward and fought with each other. He smiled and watched for a while, then took out a bead. This essence sphere bead is also a treasure. It is said that there are many transformations and there are 36 of them. I will give it to you as well. Then he rubbed his hands and the bead turned into many shiny beads, which fell down like raindrops. Previously he threw out 108 flying swords. Now he turned the essence sphere bead into 106 beads, which corresponded to the 214 demons present. The remaining 100 demon kings and demon kings could only watch enviously. They were under the Fiend Lord, they did not dare to participate in this. Li Yunxin smiled and said, "I'm also very happy to see everyone fighting so hard to get into the association. I think the elders of the Little Demon Protection are even happier. Third sister, since you've become an elder of our association, it's not good for you to ask your friends to leave empty-handed. Come, here's a small token of my appreciation." As he spoke, he waved his hand and took out a set of unknown flying swords and threw them down as well. But in fact, the evil king didn't know anything about the elders. She was coldly observing Li Yunxin's actions from the sidelines. Who would have thought that she would suddenly be dragged into this mess? However, while Li Yunxin was talking, he was working at the same time. By the time she was stunned, the demon kings and demon generals under her command had also gone to fight for it. Li Yunxin's words made them feel that their Jun Shang had really agreed to this matter. Even if he hadn't, for the sake of these treasures, they had to force their Jun Shang to agree. Li Yunxin looked at Emperor Li and Emperor Yi. He cupped his hands and said, "My two brothers. The evil king of the dragons, the Lord Tong Tian, and the adopted daughter of the Golden Rock are now the honorary president and guest elders of the Little Demon Protection. Are you interested in joining our association? The Little Demon Protection and the Ghost Kingdom will support each other and form an alliance?" Emperor Li waved his hand and said, "Hey, what are you talking about? My brother Li was taken care of by you before. I think you and I are congenial. Brother Li's business is my business. Of course I have no objections." Li Yunxin immediately clapped his hands and laughed. Good. The Little Demon Protection has just been established today. Immediately we have 3 elders in the mystic realm and 2 elders in the true realm. In this chaotic world we can't be underestimated, Mountain Chicken. As he said this, he waved his hand again. The chicken spirit was taken up by him on the cloud. "This is my disciple and a former demon general under my command. He went through fire and water with me and made great contributions. Now he and Lu Gongzan will temporarily take care of the Little Demon Protection for me." Lu Gongzan was stunned. He said in a low voice, "Brother Xenu." Li Yunxin laughed and said in a loud voice, "Now that this matter is over, I'm heading east. Today the Little Demon Protection was not established by me. I got the approval from the Lord of Shinryu. Otherwise, how would I dare to bring my third sister here? So, I'm going to the Dragon Island in 2 days." When he said that he wanted to establish the Little Demon Protection and make a bunch of people elders, no one took it seriously. Li Yunxin was wild and unruly, but he was a thoughtful person. Sometimes he did something casually, but it was after careful consideration. But sometimes he created something with great fanfare, for example the dragon cult in City of Wei, but it was just a cover-up. Tonight he suddenly created something on the spur of the moment. Both the evil lord and Bai Yunxin felt that he was trying to cover up his other motives. But they didn't expect him to mention the approval from the Lord of Shinryu. When they heard this, they knew it was bullshit. Why would the Lord of Shinryu ask him to do such things? The evil lord sighed and said, "Lord of Wei River, just do what you want to do. But I, the president and the elders?" He paused and turned to look at the group of demons. At this moment, the demons were fighting with each other. They had already divided up most of the treasures left behind by Li Yunxin. The treasures he left behind were just enough for each demon. But even a fool would know that it wouldn't be evenly distributed. Therefore those who didn't get the treasures looked at him eagerly, wanting him to give them something more. Seeing this scene, he knew that even if these demons didn't say anything, their sincerity and loyalty were almost zero. They didn't leave because they were afraid that Li Yunxin would kill them. At the same time, they hoped to get some benefits. How could such a group of demons succeed? So he continued, if it's really what the Lord of Shinryu wants me to do, I might have to accept it. But now that you and I know about this, Li Yunxin waved his hand, third sister, you don't believe me? The evil lord smiled, you don't need to do this between people like us. The Lord of Immortals won't care about this. Even if you're doing it seriously, you won't have the chance to tell the Lord of Immortals. I don't like to cause trouble. Since the situation has developed to this point, I've helped you a lot. From now on, it's better if we don't have anything to do with each other. She had always been a proud person. Among the many things that happened tonight, if it wasn't for the sake of protecting Bai Yunxin, she wouldn't have chosen to swallow her anger and follow Li Yunxin's arrangements. At least she wouldn't have accepted it after she was schemed against and was treated well. At this point, everything was over. She had returned to the peak of the mystic realm. She was already very kind not to look for Li Yunxin to settle the score. Why would she have the mood to continue playing with him? So after saying this, she sighed, I hope that Lord Wei River, this little demon will protect you and everything will go smoothly. I won't accompany you for now. After saying this, she turned around and was about to leave. Bai Yunxin reached out to pull her as if she wanted to persuade her. People in the secular world said that girls tended to be outgoing. Now, this female demon could be considered to be the best example. At this time, a female voice suddenly said, I know about this matter. Then the sky suddenly shone with golden light. It was as if the sun had risen earlier. The sky was illuminated by this light, and the fire on the ground seemed to be suppressed by the light. The fire instantly weakened. Everything within a radius of several hundred miles was exposed, and everything was plated with a layer of flowing gold. Some kind of aura spread out. This aura was different from that of the terrifying aura of a high-ranked demon. That kind of aura could only make people feel afraid, tremble, and want to bow their heads in worship. It was very difficult for them to have any other feelings. However, this aura was more magnificent and gentle. Majesty and kindness coexisted, like the light cast by the sun in the sky that nourished all living things. The feelings of awe rose from the bottom of people's hearts like a tide, and quickly surrounded everyone in the field. Those little demons couldn't help but become silent, couldn't help but raise their heads to look at the golden light, and couldn't help but bow their heads. If they were on the ground now, they would probably immediately prostrate themselves. Because there was a figure in the golden light. This figure was very blurry and couldn't be seen clearly. They only knew that it was wearing a bright robe, and there were two bright horns on its forehead. However, no one, including the evil lord, suspected the identity of the person who came. With such power, even the evil spirit lord found it hard to muster any will to resist. He even had to spend some effort to maintain his independent mind. If it wasn't the Lord of Demons and the true dragon god, who else could it be? This was also one of the reasons why the 9 of them rarely came into contact with Lord Shinryu. Under her aura and light, the desire to submit in their hearts was almost uncontrollable, and it was constantly fighting with their rationality. The evil lord immediately circulated his demon power throughout his body to make his mind clearer. Then he bowed and said loudly, Your subject welcomes the Lord Shinryu's majestic presence. After saying this, she looked at Li Yunxin as she bowed. She couldn't suppress the shock in her mind, and it was almost impossible to express it in words. Li Yunxin had many tricks up his sleeves, and she wasn't surprised that he was able to achieve what he had today. But, did he really get the approval of the true Dragon Celestial by creating this so-called Little Fiendish Demon Protection Association? In fact, this wasn't what surprised her. If he had the chance and time to tell this idea to the Lord Shinryu with his eloquence, he would probably be able to achieve this goal. The real problem was, how did he get the Lord Shinryu to pay attention to him, and how did he get the Lord Shinryu, who had not appeared in the world for almost 1,000 years, to appear here for this matter? She really wanted to find a trace of panic or surprise on Li Yunxin's face. But, there was only a calm and respectful expression on his face. It was as if he really invited the Lord Shinryu here, and had already predicted this situation. But the problem was, if he had the Lord Shinryu's help, why would he spend so much effort to come up with so many schemes, such as faking his death on the battlefield? Thinking of this, a bold idea suddenly came to her mind. Maybe something important happened during the short period of time that Li Yunxin was in the Cloudy Mountains. With his mere cultivation level, he suddenly controlled the heaven and earth mother plate and reversed the situation in one fell swoop. He made use of the things that so many people worked so hard to manage. There must be some inside story behind this. When he was in the cloudy mountains, what exactly happened? Chapter 569. However, there was no time for her to think further. The Lord Shinryu spoke for the second time. Lord Wei River, you did a good job on this matter. It is beneficial for the demon race. The rest of you should do your best. Li Yunxin smiled and bowed. It's all thanks to the Divine Lord's wise leadership. I only did a little bit of work. His attitude was not so much respectful as intimate, and he seemed to be doing it on purpose so that everyone would know that he, a small character who had been hunted by all sides and crushed by all kinds of forces, turned out to have such a big backer behind him. The Lord nodded slightly. The bright light in the sky flowed like water as she moved. Although most people did not dare to look at her, everyone knew what the Lord was doing because of the light. She looked at the evil Lord again. Evil Lord, the Wei River Lord needs your help in this matter. However, I know that you do not like to be involved in worldly affairs. Therefore it is up to you. However, your daughter can help Lord Wei River on your behalf. The evil Lord lowered her head slightly. However, when she heard this, she raised her head and looked at the bright image of Shinryu in the sky. Her face turned even paler. The words, your little daughter, struck her heart like a clap of thunder. She immediately lowered her head again. It seemed like she was hurt by the golden light and realized that she had lost her composure. However, she looked at Li Yunxin from the corner of her eyes. The words in her eyes were, you told her? Li Yunxin shrugged his shoulders lightly. I didn't expect it either. However, nothing else happened after that. Shinryu's gaze quickly moved away from the evil lord and landed on the ninth young master. This was the newly appointed Lord Tongtian of Li Yunxin. From the moment Shinryu appeared, he wanted to appear calm and composed. His hands were crossed in front of his abdomen and his head was slightly lowered. Just like a real official in the palace, he stood respectfully and obediently. But if one took a closer look, they would find that his crossed hands were clasped so tightly that the veins on the back of his hands were exposed. He could hardly contain his nervousness and was expressing it in various ways. In fact, when the Divine Emperor looked at him, due to the flow of the light, he also felt Shinryu's gaze. He immediately raised his head. But then he lowered his head and shifted his feet anxiously on the cloud in midair. After 2 breaths of time, the true dragon celestial let out a low sigh. This sigh did not seem to come from her alone. It was more like the heavens and the earth were sighing at the same time, as if the entire world was sighing for him. Little Nine, it has been hard on you all these years. The Divine Lord said this in a gentle and kind tone, completely different from the dignified tone he used when talking to others. Raise your head. Let me take a good look at you. Everyone had a look of surprise on their faces. In fact, they were even more surprised than when Shinryu showed up. Li Yunxin was originally a nobody. But now, this joking little demon bodyguard actually caused Shinryu to show up. Until now. The ninth young master, who was not favored by everyone and was exiled to the Wei River Dongting for thousands of years, actually received such words from Shinryu. If it was a human, if it was a mother and son in the human world, it would be fine. However, no one had ever seen such familial love between demons and monsters before. But the ninth young master was no less surprised than the others. His body stiffened as if he suspected that he heard wrong. However, he did not dare to raise his head immediately and did not know what to do. So he subconsciously looked at Li Yunxin. Li Yunxin. This Li Yunxin. At first, he was like a trembling but interesting little beast in front of him. But after the ninth young master died and his dragon body was taken away, he realized that he was not a little beast, but a poisonous snake. When he saw more of Li Yunxin's means and heard more information about Li Yunxin from his second brother, Lord Tongtian Hatred, he finally knew what kind of person he met on that rainy night. He was not a poisonous snake. He was a devil. His hatred for Li Yunxin was hard to eliminate. However, Hatred's consciousness eroded his will, making him forget and lose a lot of things when he was desperate and helpless. The death that Li Yunxin brought to him was in an instant. And the death brought by Lord Tongtian was a long and horrible process. This process finally made his hatred for his second brother overwhelm his hatred for Li Yunxin. In the end, after Li Yunxin promised to save him and guided him purposefully, it fermented into some kind of abnormal emotion. In Li Yunxin's words, this emotion of the ninth young master actually had a specific name, Stockholm Syndrome. It was more common in people who were emotionally sensitive and easily dependent on others. For example, a person was kidnapped by a kidnapper, but the kidnapper let him live. The hostage gradually became grateful to the kidnapper, and even developed some kind of attachment, good impression, and fought together with the kidnapper to save him. And now, when the ninth young master felt uneasy and lost, he subconsciously looked at Li Yunxin. He saw Li Yunxin smiling and nodding at him, and then slightly shaking his head in the direction of Shinryu. The ninth young master felt that he was saying to himself, "Don't worry. I did this for you and I said I would make it up to you. Now you can feel at ease and don't need to worry about anything." His madly beating heart calmed down a little. Then he clenched his fist and raised his head. Shinryu's face was beautiful, gentle, dignified, and peaceful. He could see the majesty of a king in her, and also, the ninth young master didn't know if it was his illusion, he could see the glory of motherhood. In the night sky, maybe it was because his eyes were burned by the golden light, but water vapor slowly rose from his body. This caused his figure to become indistinct, and his face to become indistinct. Shinryu smiled again. "I know the hatred between you and Lord Weishui. He also told me about your grievances. But I put you in Weishui Dongting, not because I neglected you but because I have other important things for you to do. Now the things there have been finished and your merit is complete. All the hardships you have suffered these days, just take it as my test for you. Since you have passed this test, now you deserve the title of Lord Tongtian." The mist on the ninth young master's body became more and more violent, and his face was almost completely covered. The newly titled Lord Tongtian couldn't speak. Shinryu looked at Li Yunxin. "Lord Weishui, does the new body you made for Lord Tongtian have a name?" Li Yunxin smiled. He bowed and said, "Lord, I have heard a rumor before. It said, there is a kind of mythological beast named Ba Wei, which is also Dragon's son and Dragon King's favorite son. Because he violated the law of heaven, he was banished to the mortal world to guard the canal for 1,000 years. After that, he was released. In order to commemorate his achievements, people carved him on the bridge to suppress the river and prevent the flood. This story was made up by the common people in the mortal world, but it is widely spread. I think the story of Ba Wei is similar to the experience of the ninth young master, and it is said that his real body is very similar to the dragon body of Lord Tongtian. Therefore, I made such a body for the ninth young master. I did not report to Lord Tongtian, I should be reprimanded." He drew a dragon son without permission, but said that he was reprimanded. It was really arrogant. However, Shinryu listened to him and smiled. "Little Nine has done a good job, he should be rewarded. You are too eager to protect him, so you are not wrong. I give my permission for this. From today onwards, the real name of Lord Tongtian is Ba Wei. He is ranked second among all the dragon's son. The whole world should know about it." Li Yunxin quickly said, "Lord Tongtian is here tonight, the whole world will know about it in the future. Lord Tongtian Ba Wei, you should thank Lord Tongtian for his gift." At this moment, the ninth young master seemed to wake up from a dream. After a while, he squeezed out a few words in a trembling voice. "Thank Lord Tongtian for his gift." Shinryu actually nodded slightly. "After this matter is settled, Lord Wei River should come to my Dragon Island. Lord Tongtian, follow him to the Dragon Island. I have missed you for so many years." The ninth young master could not say anything. He suddenly knelt on top of the cloud, and his whole body was covered by the thick cloud. Shinryu then nodded with satisfaction. "Lord Wei River. Where is Guqin?" Li Yunxin calmly bowed to Shinryu. He then looked at Emperor Li. He said in a deep voice, "Lord Tongtong." The traitor Qianyo knew that he had been exposed and had no other choice, so he used his supernatural power to escape. "After this matter is settled, I will investigate carefully along the way. I will also ask the demon kings to interrogate him. He will not be able to escape from Lord Tongtian's trap." Li Yunxin finally mentioned the demons. The demons immediately shouted, "We are willing to serve Lord Tongtian and serve Lord Wei River." At this moment they were surprisingly quick-witted. They knew that Lord Tongtian would still have to return to the Dragon Island even if he showed himself. However, Lord Wei River Li Yunxin was Shinryu's favorite. Bootlicking him was much more beneficial than bootlicking Shinryu. However, this time the bootlicking seemed to have backfired. Shinryu was silent for a while, then said in a deep voice, "From what I see, the mastermind of this matter is hatred. Guqin Lord Qianyo might have been deceived by him and did not investigate. Now that the mastermind has been executed, if Guqin Lord shows signs of repentance, I will not pursue this matter anymore. Let's not talk about him anymore." Just like the demons, the evil lord turned to look at Li Yunxin in surprise. But he realized that Li Yunxin was also surprised. If he was not faking it, it meant that he did not expect Shinryu to say such a thing. Hatred, where did he get the ability to confuse Chionyo? Shinryu continued, but you also said that Tao Wu and Hatred are in cahoots with each other and want to fight against the demons. If that's the case, we need to punish them severely. From now on, I will strip Lord Tao Wu of his title. All the demons in the world can rise up and kill him. Whoever kills Tao Wu will be given the title of Lord Tao Wu and the treasures of the Crimson Cloud Palace. The evil lord sighed. She knew this day would come, but she did not expect it to be so soon. Lord Shinryu was simply impatient. Before this, Kyuko and Shinryu were able to coexist peacefully because of the balance of power. The suppression of the Celestial Gate forced Shinryu to rely on Kyuko and not act rashly. But now, Guqin Lord and Hatred made a wrong move and caused Li Yunshin to lose everything. When the Celestial Gate was destroyed, the power from the outside world was gone. The true Dragon Celestial had begun to clean up the unrestrained feudal lords. Chapter 570. No wonder she looked so high-spirited, no wonder she was so close to Li Yunshin. This New Way River Lord must have become Shinryu's #1 confidant. But the evil lord frowned again. But she felt Shinryu was a little strange. She couldn't tell what was strange. Although the 9 sons were Shinryu's, they didn't nurse and raise them like mother and son in the human world. In fact, they had never been close to the Lord since they were born. They only saw Shinryu's incarnation like today. The last time she saw Shinryu was 2,000 years ago. At that time Shinryu looked the same, but she felt something was wrong. She didn't know if it was just her imagination. After all, 2,000 years could change a lot of things. But there were 2 reasons why she dared to have such a bold idea. First, Li Yunshin was too spoiled by Shinryu. She felt it was unreal, unless Li Yunshin met with something in Mount Cloud, and it was beyond her imagination. Second, she knew about Red Lady. According to her daughter, Bai Yunshin, the dragon soul in Red Lady's body had taken over her body and merged with her previous consciousness. Hong Yu's personality also changed. Maybe this so-called Lord Shinryu was her in disguise. However, if that was the case, how did Hong Yu manage to imitate the true dragon so well? The second hypothesis didn't seem to be valid. She calmed herself down and didn't say anything, waiting to see how things would develop. When Shinryu gave such a decree, all the demons present responded in unison. What happened tonight would soon spread all over the world. Maybe there would be some great demon kings who wanted to find trouble with Lao Ai. It was hard to say whether or not he would be able to kill the dragon son, but it was certain that he would be hard-pressed to deal with it. After saying this, Shinryu finally looked at the 2 ghost emperors. The 2 ghost emperors were once mortals. Now that he had become a ghost cultivator, he should belong to the demon race and be led by the Shinryu. But in the past they were all supreme beings. How could he obediently bow his head and listen to him now? Although he could now feel the terrifying might of Shinryu, there were still many things that made him feel mysterious and holy when he heard them. However, if the true dragon really appeared like it did today and also showed the emotions of an ordinary person, the sense of holiness would be greatly reduced. Therefore, when Shinryu's gaze swept over Emperor Li, he could still clench his teeth and straighten his chest to look her in the eye. Although he only managed to hold on for a moment, he could no longer bear the pressure and drooped his head. However, Shinryu didn't say a word to them. After carefully examining the 2 cultivators, he retracted his gaze and said, "River Lord Wei, your subject is here. After dealing with this matter, hurry to the Dragon Island. I have another important task for you." These words caused countless demons to be envious and jealous, to be able to be entrusted with important tasks by the Shinryu government. Li Yunshin smiled and said, "Yes." The Shinryu paused for a moment. Then, the light that filled the sky suddenly retracted. As if the tide had retreated, the world returned to darkness. The demons sensed this change and looked up at the sky. They saw, the thick clouds were illuminated by the mysterious light, as if there was a sun hidden behind the clouds. Amidst the clouds, there were huge scales glistening with golden light, as well as a huge dragon's head that flashed through the clouds. The long tentacles and mane glided through the clouds, as if the galaxy was flowing in the sky. These demons were fortunate enough to see some of the dragon son's true forms on the battlefield, and they all knew that the true form of dragons was majestic and extraordinary. But now that she had seen the real body of the true dragon, the dragon head finally understood what shock was. It was as if the entire world was just a shallow pond for her to stay in. If her real body were to appear in the world, it would turn the world upside down. However, this glimpse quickly disappeared. After the golden light appeared in the thick clouds, Shinryu immediately disappeared. The place became quiet again. The Fiend King opened his mouth. He wanted to say something but he couldn't say anything. This true form and aura, it wasn't something that a carp demon who had just merged with a dragon's soul could disguise. This seemed to be Shinryu. That Li Yunxin, was he really favored to such an extent? What did he do? This went on for almost a quarter of an hour. After the demons had fully digested the huge shock of Shinryu's appearance in the clouds, Li Yunxin spoke again and said the same words, "Now we are all comrades." This time no one made a fuss. The demons tried to understand the meaning of this sentence, and once again tried to recall what Li Yunxin said before. Not every one of them was willing to be recruited into this little demon protector. But now they didn't have the right to object and could only accept it like before, because this was an order from an existence that they couldn't go against, and they couldn't even think of going against it. And now, Li Yunxin in the sky was the messenger of that existence. For the first time they looked at Li Yunxin with respect and no other emotions. 2 days later. This was the official road of Yi country, and it extended all the way to the east, passing the border of Yu country. Previously, hundreds of thousands of soldiers passed through this official road, transporting wood and red soil to Tongtian Swamp, and then retreated because of the massacre by the cultivators of Xianmen. When they retreated, the demons had already started to attack Cloud Mountain, and the mortal army encountered an even more dangerous situation, leaving behind many corpses. Corpses and broken armor piled up on the roadside and no one collected them. But fortunately it was late autumn and the weather was cold and the decay was slow. But today, when Li Yunxin and the Fiend King walked on this road, these corpses were nowhere to be seen. Because last night, autumn turned to winter and it snowed for the first time. The first snow of this year in Yi country was very heavy. Snowflakes as thick as goose feathers fell from the sky, burying the trees, weeds and corpses that had not yet fallen off. Heaven and earth were covered in a vast expanse of white, as if the terrible massacre a few days ago had happened a long time ago. Now there was only emptiness and loneliness. They left a series of footprints in the snow, and finally stopped in front of a dilapidated post house by the roadside. Li Yunxin conjured a white fox fur cloak for himself. Now, his handsome face was covered by the fur, and he raised his hands to salute the Fiend King. "Even if you send me off for 1,000 miles, we still have to part. Third sister, I will see you off here." The Fiend King sighed. "Escaping was only a matter of a moment. But you insisted that I accompany you all the way. It turns out that ninth brother likes to play this little trick of sending me off for 1,000 miles. Well, now you are satisfied. It's time for me to go." After saying this, he looked into the distance. Dozens of steps behind Li Yunxin, Lu Gongzan, the chicken spirit, the ninth young master, and Bai Yunxin were talking about something. The Fiend King thought for a while. He was about to speak. Li Yunxin exhaled a mouthful of white mist and said, "Don't worry, third sister. Miss Bai saved my life in the past. I will not put her in danger. Besides, she is also in the profound realm. There is nothing to be afraid of." The Fiend King sighed, "I hope so." Then he looked at Li Yunxin carefully. Looking at the current Li Yunxin, his face was slightly red. His skin was even dry from the cold. It was not unusual for a mortal to look like this, including when he exhaled white mist when he spoke. But when it appeared on Long Sun, in fact they were formed from dragon essence and demonic souls. Strictly speaking, they did not have a physical body. They did not need to breathe and were not afraid of cold or heat. Now, when Li Yunxin spoke with white mist and his face was red from the cold, the Fiend King knew that he was playing. He seemed to find it fun to make himself look like a human. In the past 2 days the Fiend King found that he liked to eat fruits. To Long Sun this was something that was not necessary at all. He frowned and said, "Ninth brother, since you are so reluctant to part with your human life, why did you do this? How could he be so vicious?" Li Yunxin rubbed his hands as if he was scared. "Third sister, you mean, you destroyed the destiny of the profound sects in the world? You prevented people from cultivating easily." She looked at Li Yunxin and said, "What you did is a great contribution to the demons. But to humans, it's incomparably vicious. Because of this, you won the Divine Lord's favor. So, I don't know if it is a blessing or a curse for Xener to fall in love with you." Li Yunxin smiled and said, "After all, I am a demon now. As for the human life, everyone has their own little quirks. If a demon is not vicious, what kind of demon is he? Well, only someone as powerful as third sister can be kind." The Fiend King knew that she could not get any more information from him. So she said, "Fine. Ninth brother. Be careful. The Dragon Island might be more dangerous than Yunshan. After saying this, she waved her sleeves. A gust of demon wind carried snowflakes up to the sky. More than 100 whirlwinds appeared in the vast snowfield far away. The evil lord and the many demon kings under her command had gone far away together. Bai Yunshin also flew up to the sky when she saw this. She did not know if she should bid farewell to the fiend king. Li Yunshin looked up to the sky for a while and walked to the post house. He sat on the wooden railing beside the post house. On the other side, ninth young master said something to the chicken spirit. The current lord of heaven reaching and Ba Xiao pretended to be angry. The chicken spirit had been with Li Yunshin for a long time and was naturally slippery. He coaxed the ninth young master like he was coaxing a child. The atmosphere between the two was quite harmonious. Lu Gongzan walked into the post house and shook off the snow on his body. He patted his head and sighed softly. It didn't snow so early last year. It is a month early this year. Previously there was a land requisition. I guess the crops in the fields were confiscated too. Look at it now, they are all buried in the ground. As he said this, he sat down beside Li Yunshin. He took out a small silver wine pot from his bosom and shook it. But there was no sound from the flask. It seemed to be frozen. He then drew something on the wall of the flask. After 2 breaths, a faint white mist rose from the mouth of the flask, and the wine was warm. Lao Dao poured a line of wine into his mouth, smacked his lips and wiped his mouth. He then placed his hands on his knees and stared at the muddy ground in a daze. Suddenly he turned to look at Li Yunshin. Brother Xing. He saw Li Yunshin crossing his arms and leaning on the railing of the post house. He then turned to look into the distance and said, I wonder what Brother Ji and Brother Lu are up to. They should be here by now. When the old Taoist heard him say this, he looked a little disappointed. But Li Yunshin quickly retracted his gaze and looked at him. He said softly, I understand. Chapter 571. Each country mobilized hundreds of thousands of soldiers and needed millions of people to support them. These people had probably conscripted all the laborers in the nearby countries. Now that the army has suffered a crushing defeat, it will be a natural disaster. If the snow falls early, it will be a great famine. If it was before, the Taoists of the Shenmen would still be here. Although they wouldn't do much, they could still help. At least they wouldn't let the demons harm people. But now, Li Yunshin smiled and shook his head. He reached out his hand outside the pavilion and caught a few snowflakes. He looked at them and said, the demons will soon bring chaos to the world. When natural and man-made disasters come together, I'm afraid corpses will be everywhere and starving people will be everywhere. Lu Gongzan's lips trembled. He suddenly closed his eyes and gritted his teeth. His beard trembled. I'm so sinful. I'm afraid I won't be able to sleep in peace for the rest of my life. Li Yunshin still smiled and said, it's not your fault. It's me. Lu Gongzan's eyes were still closed as he heaved a heavy sigh. Li Yunshin smiled again. Old Lu, tell me the truth. Do you really think this is a sin? Lu Gongzan opened his eyes. He froze at first and then furrowed his brows. Let me ask you this. What did you think of Yi Mo and Qing Chu? Li Yunshin said, at that time, did you hope for the two sides to fight a tug-of-war for hundreds of years? Or did you hope for one side to grow quickly and end the war as soon as possible? Lu Gongzan opened his mouth. Previously, his eyes had been turbid like a zombie. But now, hearing Li Yunshin's words, although it didn't seem to be related to his thoughts, a glimmer of hope lit up in him. He furrowed his brows and thought for a while before saying, of course, it's better if the war ends earlier. At least the people don't have to suffer. So it ended early, Li Yunshin said. But I remember that many people died in the Yi army. Many of them fought to the death and didn't surrender. In order to strike fear into the Yi army, the Qing army once beheaded 30,000 captives at once. The Yi soldiers who died and the captives who were beheaded were all victims of that war. They were also ordinary people with wives and children. But if they don't die, the war will continue and more people will suffer. Li Yunshin slowly stopped smiling and looked at Lu Gongzan seriously. This is called labor pains. Good days, though relative, must be preceded by pains and sacrifices. Lu Gongzan was silent for a while. At this time, the ninth young master and the chicken spirit had gone somewhere. For the newborn ninth young master, it was the first time he experienced happiness to have so many good friends, and not have to worry about his fief being occupied by a big monster or being hunted by a demon. So he was carefree and happy like a child. Thus the area around the post house became quiet. For a moment, It was so quiet that even the rustling of falling snow could be heard. After a few breaths, Lu Gongzan finally said, Brother Xian is saying that these people who starve to death, freeze to death, and in the future, those who die because of the evil of demons are all sacrifices, necessary sacrifices and labor pains. But so many people and lives have been sacrificed. What can we get in exchange? Li Yunxin stared at Lu Gongzan. He looked at him seriously for a while and then said in a very quiet voice, as if he was afraid others would hear, in exchange for everything. Lao Dao furrowed his brows. What everything? Li Yunxin gently raised his hand and pointed at the sky. Not afraid of the power of celestials. He then pointed down. Not afraid of the power of demons. I once told you that I came from another world. In that world, what demons and cultivators can do, mortals can also do. Mortals can soar high in the sky and dive deep into the sea. His eyes were sincere and clear. People in this world can also do this. Lu Gongzan's eyelids trembled violently. He sucked in a breath of cold air. Brother X and you, he turned his face and looked around as if afraid of being heard by a third person. He also lowered his voice. You did all these, for this purpose? Brother Xian, in your previous world there were also demons and cultivators. Maybe you did this? Did you do the same thing there? Li Yunxin didn't answer him directly. He just stood up and took a deep breath. Yesterday you asked me if the ninth young master would harm me if I brought him with me. The answer to that question is the same as the answer to this question. In the past, the ninth young master was under a lot of pressure like me. The feeling of that pressure was not good. But it could make people grow. If he could stand out from that kind of environment and survive, he would become a great demon that could dominate the world. Unfortunately, he failed. Speaking of this, Li Yunxin squinted his eyes and looked into the distance. Until now, I gave him a body at the peak of the realm of truth, a title and a fief. He was happy because he knew that he had me and the Lord Shinryu as his support. But because of this, it was difficult for him to make progress. We are his support, but we will also be his cage. If a person knew that he could always ask for help from someone, he wouldn't really put all his eggs in one basket to achieve something that he thought was unimaginable. It's the same. In the past, the Shenmen were also the cage and support of the human world. With them, people would never be a person. They would never think about, other than immortal spells, what other means could be used to obtain power that mortals dare not imagine. Lu Gongzan was dumbfounded. He didn't even notice that the pot of wine in his hand had fallen to the ground. Only then did Li Yunxin smile slightly and look at him. Break their cage. Take away their crutches. This is what you and I are doing for them now. It's time for people to be real people. A surge of turbulent emotions surged in Lu Gongzan's heart. When he walked into the pavilion, his heart was dead. He didn't know whether his heart was cold or warm, and he didn't know where the official road under his feet led to. But now his heart was burning again. It was as if all the wine in the pot had entered his throat, making his stomach feel warm. He stood up excitedly, restraining the surging emotions in his heart. He moved closer to Li Yunxin and said in a low but firm voice, I know. I knew it. Brother Xian always has a plan in his heart when he does things. No matter what others say, I have always known it in my heart. At this point, it seemed that there were no words that could express his emotions. Because of extreme excitement, Lao Dao's forehead was slightly steaming. He suddenly restrained his expression and repeated what Li Yunxin had said before, which sounded neither fish nor fowl in this world, word by word, we are comrades. Li Yunxin smiled and nodded. He didn't say anything but just reached out and patted Lu Gongzan's shoulder. You and I know about this. Lao Dao nodded solemnly again. He looked radiant as if he had been reborn. At this moment, a dark cloud suddenly rolled in the distance, blowing away the snowflakes in the sky. That black cloud, like a black dragon, flew straight into the pavilion. The strong wind it created made old Taoist Lu lose his footing. He was blown several feet away before he managed to stand on the snowy ground and did not fall. Looking at this arrogant momentum, he knew that it was none other than Emperor Li. But Lu Gongzan was still immersed in the excitement just now, and didn't care about this. He steadied himself on the snowy ground, nodded at Li Yunxin and walked away. His steps were steady and calm without any hesitation. Li Yunxin withdrew his gaze, and saw Emperor Li staring at him angrily. Brother Li, tell me the truth, do you know that little lady? Li Yunxin stared at the ghost emperor for a while and laughed. Which little lady? Emperor Li stared at him with his bell-like eyes and said loudly, which little lady? That night, Li Yunxin hurriedly put a finger in front of his lips. Brother Ji. That night, I took a look at her, and I could see that her cultivation was extraordinary. She should have a great background. Brother Ji, please don't make it public. I know you have nothing to be afraid of, but it's better to have less trouble. Emperor Li snorted reluctantly. That's true. Do you know her or not? Li Yunxin sighed. What did she say to Brother Ji, and you suspect that I sent her there? It's fine if she said something. Emperor Li shouted angrily. But she said nothing. After saying this, a strange look appeared on his face. Bad luck. Bad luck. Looking at his reaction, Li Yunxin's face flashed a trace of surprise. But he hid it well. He pulled Emperor Li to sit beside the pavilion and looked at him seriously. Brother, you don't look good. If you trust me, please tell me. My cultivation is not even 1/10,000th of yours. But my brain is still a little flexible. Maybe I can give you some ideas? Emperor Li sat there angrily for a while. Then he frowned and slapped his thigh. Damn it. Bad luck, bad luck. When Emperor Li was an emperor, it was said that he was very dignified. But after he died and became a ghost, his temperament changed and he became like a living bandit. Maybe when he was an emperor, he yearned for this kind of free and unrestrained life. After cursing, he looked at Li Yunxin. Hey brother, you have a lot of ideas. Even the divine dragon loves you and I trust you too. Now I can only tell you, but you can't tell anyone else. Li Yunxin smiled sincerely. I always keep my mouth shut. If I don't want to say something, even the heavens can't pry a word out of me. The words, the heavens, which was full of banditry, won the favor of Emperor Li again. He sighed again and finally said, Alas. In my life I only liked beautiful women. Unfortunately, after I died there was no one that the ghost emperor liked. That night I finally met that young lady. She made me so happy that I was bursting with joy. Who cares where she came from, I will take her first. Li Yunxin was in awe. He gave a thumbs up. Fine clothes, fine horses, strong wine, and beautiful women. This is what a hero should pursue. Brother, your ambition is so much better than those stupid monsters. Emperor Li was pleased by this flattery. But he sighed again, but, alas. That night, Shinryu left and we said our goodbyes. I took the beauty to a secluded place. Emperor Li smacked his lips. I endured it for 2 nights. Until last night. I saw that the beauty was about to wake up. So I put 64 restrictions on her. I wanted to make it happen first. Chapter 572. Li Yunxin pricked up his ears and squinted his eyes like a cat. And then? Emperor Li sighed for a while and then spat. Bah. Bad luck. It's a stone core. Hearing this word, Li Yunxin was stunned for a while. Only then did he understand what Emperor Li meant. He was a doctor in his previous life. Although he was different from the doctors that the public knew, he knew a lot of obscure knowledge because of his identity. For example, the stone core actually referred to the stone girl. The private parts were closed because of congenital or acquired diseases. There were different kinds of diseases, some could be cured and some were incurable. In ancient times, because of the underdeveloped technology and superstition, this kind of patient was often regarded as very unlucky. But Li Yunxin was still stunned when he heard this word. Let's not talk about why he let Gu Qingjun be taken away by Emperor Li. But in the end he still harbored a malicious thought in his heart. That zither lady looked noble and unsullied, and her mouth was full of brotherly love and worldly affairs. But in fact she not only killed him but also watched him die. For this kind of person, it would be too easy to let him die. When Li Yunxin was up to no good, she was the best. She should give him to Emperor Li and let the ghost emperor humiliate him. But no matter what he thought, he did not expect it to be like this. The stone girl. His big brother, Gu Qingjun, looked like a woman and spoke like a woman. But he called himself brother. No, he never called himself brother. He liked to be called Young Dragon Master, or Gu Qingjun. There must be women in this world who suffered from this disease, but it could not be Long Sun. Li Yunxin was stunned for a while and then he saw Emperor Li spit on the ground and sighed, Alas, so unlucky. I can't bear to throw her away. Bah, this is really a dilemma. I can't advance or retreat. Brother Li, what do you think we should do? Li Yunxin let out a sigh of relief. Brother? Did you look carefully? Could it be a man? I mean a eunuch? Emperor Li waved his hand and said, Eunuchs are nothing special. How could I not have seen them before? In the past I got tired of playing with them. I told those eunuchs to take off their pants and stand in front of Realizing that he had made a slip of the tongue, he waved his hand and said, "Anyway, no. You didn't see it? When I grabbed her breasts, they were smooth and plump. When I rubbed her buttocks, they were round and perky. I've seen countless women, but when have I ever seen such a stunning beauty? Alas, it's a pity." Emperor Li the old Tish was lamenting again. However, Li Yunxin did not take it to heart. According to what he said, this zither monarch was really like a stone woman. However, for Li Yunxin there was actually another possibility. Perhaps it was only in his previous world that there was such a saying: angels, holy spirits, did not have gender. The sexless ones were the gods of some of the myths of his world. And in the eyes of the mortals of this world, how was the zither monarch different from a god? A bold idea formed in his mind. However, he felt that his idea was infinitely closer to the truth. The zither monarch was not a stone woman. In fact, strictly speaking, she was neither a woman nor a man. She was neutral or sexless. In his previous world, the angels and holy spirits of a certain religion were light or flame. They only appeared in human form so that the believers could see their true appearance. However, in order to maintain purity and holiness, the human body should be sexless. Furthermore, weren't they, the dragon sons, essentially made up of dragon essence and demon soul? It was only for the sake of walking on earth that they had a real body, dharma body, and fiend god body. Perhaps, because of certain reasons, the zither monarch became sexless. However, according to Li Yunxin's previous understanding, a person's psychological sex did not necessarily match their physical sex. If she was born with a woman's body but had a man's temperament, it would not be strange for her to call herself a brother or a young dragon master. Or she had a woman's body and temperament, but in order to convince the masses, it was understandable that she pretended to be a man. Thinking of this, he carefully recalled the time when he took over the 9th young master's body and reconstructed his own body. In fact, there seemed to be a model in the unseen world. This model defined his general appearance when he condensed into a human body. For example, 4 or 5 limbs, abnormally thin or abnormally fat. As for the rest, he could do as he pleased. Therefore, there was the same Li Yunxin today. This meant that the zither monarch's model was what he was now. The relationship between the reality of this world and the legend of his world, Li Yunxin could not fully understand for a while. But at this time, Emperor Li stretched out his hand and slapped the railing, immediately shaking the snow on the pavilion. "Brother, tell me, what should we do about this?" Only then did Li Yunxin look at him again. He pretended to frown and pondered for a while before saying, "So, according to what Brother Ji just said, that girl was stripped naked by you and looked at thoroughly, then she woke up. But she was seriously injured and couldn't break free from your inhibition. She didn't tell you anything you asked. Is this the current situation?" Emperor Li sighed. "Yes. Now Brother Liu is looking after her for me. Hey. I wanted to say goodbye to you so I came. Let's see what you have to say." Li Yunxin smiled and waved her hand. "Sai, it's not exactly brilliant. In fact, according to Brother Ji's experience, you should already have an idea. But being in this mountain, I couldn't see it clearly for a while. Let me say a few words. If Brother Ji thinks what I said is right, then I will help you to see the light." Li Yunxin's flattery was flawless, and Emperor Li enjoyed it very much. He increasingly felt that this Lord of Wei River was a wonderful person. No matter what he talked about, he was always eloquent and insightful, and could be said to be a peerless genius. And in his heart, he regarded him as a confidant. He thought that only a true hero like this deserved to be on the same level as him. So he frowned. "Hey. We are brothers, don't be so polite. Just say it and I will forgive you." Li Yunxin smiled. "Brother Ji, let me ask you first. You used to have a country and tasted many beauties. But you always felt that they were boring and not the people you were looking for. So what do you think is boring?" Emperor Li waved his hand. "Boring is boring. Talking and doing are boring, they are just empty shells. Humph. Interesting people are always interesting, but boring people are boring in their own way." Li Yunxin smiled. "Brother, you are very philosophical. Then think about it again. Do you like that girl because she is beautiful, or because she talks and does interesting things, or because she has a mysterious identity and a high level of cultivation, so she is different from the girls you have met before, and that is why you think she is so interesting?" Emperor Li frowned and thought for a while. Suddenly he was stunned and sighed. I see. I was just looking for something new. Alas, if it wasn't for your advice." Li Yunxin hurriedly interrupted him. No, Brother Ji, that is not what I mean. I mean, maybe it is not because of the novelty, the appearance, or the identity that you like this girl. In the past, Brother Ji felt that other women were boring, perhaps for the same reason. Emperor Li's eyes widened. Soul, what? Emperor Li's eyes widened. Soulmate, what? Li Yunxin smiled. Soulmate. Then he spent half an hour to tell Emperor Li what soulmate was. But in fact it was nothing more than the concept of love, chicken soup for the soul, and the philosophy of picking up girls in his world. For the people there, it was probably a cliché that caused their ears to grow calluses. But for Emperor Li, it was a passionate, bold, and original way of expressing himself. In the past, no one dared to say these things to the Ghost Emperor. Therefore, as he listened to Li Yunxin's words, he felt more and more that Li Yunxin was a wonderful person. Really wonderful. Finally, the Ghost Emperor slapped his thigh. Damn it. Brother Li, you are so right. I used to have nothing to say to those girls. Humph, how could they understand my feelings? This soul that my brother was talking about, is it? I just have to find someone I like. I am at the peak of the Shen realm and the girl is not bad either. When we quarrel, we will not seek death and we will not tremble in fear. Well, you are right, you are right. So, Li Yunxin looked at him earnestly. Brother Ji, you have actually entered a higher level of love. What you are after is not physical pleasure, not temporary indulgence, but pure spiritual enjoyment. What you want is true love. Love, the exchange of ideas between a man and a woman, is the most beautiful thing in the world. What does it have to do with the body and whether you are a stone girl or not? Aren't you tired of those pure physical intercourse long ago? Since this girl can satisfy your spiritual needs, and only she can make you feel this way, how can you lose her? What's there to worry about? You should know that there are so many women in the world who want physical enjoyment. Even you can do it yourself. Why should she be asked to do such a thing? Isn't it a stain to your soul, mate? The Emperor Li was dumbfounded. He sat in the pavilion in a daze for a while. Then he stood up abruptly. He bowed deeply to Li Yunxin and solemnly said, Brother. Li Yunxin also stood up, held his elbow and said affectionately, Brother. Emperor Li patted him on the arm again and again. Then he said, Say no more, from now on you are my brother. Li Yunxin's eyes turned red. With a brother like you, what else can I ask for? Then he rolled his eyes and said, But Brother Ji, you must remember. A sincere relationship must go through a lot of twists and turns. That girl did not listen to you for a while, so you temporarily restrained her. When she slowly unknots the knot in her heart and calms down, it will be easier to communicate and cultivate feelings. The road to happiness is strewn with setbacks, so don't rush. A soulmate is hard to find. Emperor Li said repeatedly, Of course, I will take good care of her when I go back, and wait for good things to happen. Chapter 573. Li Yunxin smiled. Brother, you are in a good mood, but I have something to spoil your mood. That night, Shinryu came. Hearing this, Emperor Li frowned. If you want to be a lobbyist for the immortal lord, you don't have to mention it. I was an emperor when I was alive, and I will be a ghost emperor after death. As an emperor, there is no reason for me to be below others. As he said so, the smile on his face disappeared. He took 2 steps in the pavilion and said, I am not a genius who is willing to be below others. I also advise you to make plans as soon as possible. It is a chaotic world now. It is an era where heroes are born. Don't let this great future go to waste. Li Yunxin smiled bitterly and shook his head. If I knew you would say this, I would have thought about it. Since that is the case, let's not talk about anything else. His face turned serious and he cupped his fists. My journey to the east may be dangerous. If I ever need your help in the future for the sake of today. Emperor Li waved his hand. Hey. Don't be so formal. Just a word from Brother Li. Li Yunxin was touched and speechless. He nodded and strode out of the pavilion. At this moment the snow was getting heavier and heavier, and the world was covered in white. The 9th young master and the chicken spirit were nowhere to be seen. Lu Gongzan seemed to have gone into the forest to do something. Only Li Yunxin's lonely figure was left in the snow, like a grain of sand in the sea. After a while, Emperor Li, who was watching him leave from the pavilion, vaguely heard a poem in the sound of the wind and snow. Outside the pavilion, beside the ancient road, the wind and snow reached the sky. At the edge of the sky, at the corner of the earth, friends are scattered. He used to be the emperor of the Li kingdom, and it was hard to say whether he was dignified or dissolute. But he was still a great emperor. Although he was not a master of poetry, his ability to appreciate poetry was above the standard of this era. Now, listening to Li Yunxin reciting this poem in the wind and snow, although he didn't feel amazed and knew that it couldn't be considered a masterpiece by a great master, but it was rare to see it fit the occasion, and it indeed had a unique style. Thereupon other feelings arose in his heart. In the old days when he was an emperor, it was most difficult to find a master of both pen and sword. Occasionally he would obtain some, but they were all unworthy of the name. Even now, one could not say that Li Yunxin was well versed in literature just because of a few lines of poetry. But for someone as powerful as him to have such a taste, it was enough to make him, the former emperor, sigh in admiration. He was really a wonderful person. He sighed in his heart and watched Li Yunxin's figure disappear into the wind and snow. Then he turned and left. About a quarter of an hour later, Li Yunxin met Lu Gongzan 3 miles away from the post house. Old Lu started a fire and sat on a fallen tree by the roadside. When he saw Li Yunxin, he stood up and said, "Brother Xan, how did it go?" Li Yunxin waved his hand and went to the fire, stretching out his hand to roast. He frowned and said, "Everything went smoothly. Everything was expected." Then he put his hand into his bosom and took out a small jade bottle. This was something he found in the Hall of Qi. It was said that it could revive the dead and grow flesh and bones. He dipped his finger into the jade bottle and kept it. He wiped it evenly on his hand before wiping it on his face. After doing all this, he let out a long sigh. "What about the two of them? According to what you said, they should be on their way. Although the Lord Tongqian's cultivation level is high, I think he should be fine with the pheasant looking after him. I also told Bai Yunxin about this before. She should go and find them." Li Yunxin nodded. "The winter is not easy." Earlier, when the evil lord saw him make a cloak for himself and saw his face turn red from the cold, he said that he missed the feeling of being human and still had lingering feelings. This misunderstood Li Yunxin. In fact, it was just a side effect of him forcefully dying several times in a very short period of time and seizing bodies. His spirit was injured, and this injury appeared on his body. His skin became weak and started to feel cold, pain, and peeling like a normal person. This kind of thing could be considered a real itch. His physical body under his skin was still incomparably strong. If it was inconvenient, it was just an eyesore and not so pretty. This was not worth mentioning for other heroes. However, for Li Yunxin it was a big deal. Lu Gongzan knew a little. Now that he saw Li Yunxin doing these things, he felt a little happy. Because this brother Xian was actually more like a human. The two of them sat in the wind and snow around the small fire for a while. Old Lu said, "Then, shall we go to Dingzhou now?" Li Yunxin didn't move at all. She couldn't bear to move her hands away from the fire. "No, cold. The wind is strong. My face hurts." Old Lu smiled and sighed. "There are so many magic treasures. Surely we can find one that is suitable?" Li Yunxin shook his head again. "It's not about whether it is suitable or not. The main reason we are going to Dingzhou is to find someone. But if the person I am looking for really exists, right now he must be like a frightened rabbit. Also, I guess he is most likely pretending to be a normal person. So, we should also pretend to be normal people. So, as he said this, he reached out and pulled a piece of firewood from the snow in front of him and threw it into the fire. However, the accuracy was not good. The firewood fell to the side. Lu Gongzan unconsciously pushed it through the air. So, he pushed the firewood into the fire. So, you see, we are used to using supernatural powers when we do things. It is as normal as drinking water and breathing. We need to get used to being a normal person. Speaking to this point, his expression turned cold. He suddenly straightened his body. Lao Dao's expression also changed. He frowned. "What?" Li Yunxin waved his hand. He reached out and grabbed into the distance. 10 steps away from him, a large cloud of snowflakes erupted. He grabbed a furry, plump rabbit from the air. Then he pulled the rabbit over through the air and lovingly stroked it. He raised his eyes and asked Lu Gongzan, "Do you know how to roast a rabbit?" Old Lu sighed helplessly. "Brother Xan is also using supernatural powers. I think you are. This is the first time I have seen such heavy snow in years." Li Yunxin laughed. "Even if you become a demon, you also need to have a heart that discovers beauty and feels life." When Li Yunxin first entered Qinghe County and was arrested in prison, he told Constable Xing that his family lived in a small mountain village in Dingzhou. That was one of the few truths he had told. The name Dingzhou originally had the meaning of stability and peace. Since it needed stability and peace, it could not have been a good place in the past. This was a small county on the border of the Qin kingdom. It was very small, and it had been plagued by banditry for nearly 100 years. Only a provincial capital could barely be considered a large city. The rest were unranked villages and towns, mostly scattered in the mountains and fields. Some of their existence was not even known by the government, much less registered. On an early morning 3 days later, Li Yunxin and Lu Gongzan stood on a small mountain. Looking down from the top of the low mountain, one could see the dense forest covered in branches by the heavy snow. There was a small village hidden in the forest with about a dozen households. Faint smoke rose from the roofs of 5 or 6 households. There should be people there. Lao Dao saw Li Yunxin's hometown for the first time. He looked down carefully and said, "Which household did Brother Xn live in?" Without batting an eyelid, Li Yunxin pointed down the mountain. "There." Lu Gongzan looked over. He found that there was nothing there. It was next to the forest, just a gentle slope. He knew that after Li Yunxin escaped, someone had come to search carefully. When they searched, they tore apart the house but found nothing. "In the past, my parents lived in seclusion," he said. "It was a good thing for those people." Lu Gongzan realized that Li Yunxin's tone and words had become solemn and serious. Perhaps this place did mean something to him. Then the two of them slowly walked down the mountain. There was a mountain path that had been stepped on. Now that the mountain path was covered in snow, it was hard to see clearly. However, it seemed that someone had passed not long ago and left a trail of footprints in the snow. When they walked into the forest, they bumped into snow-covered branches and snow poured down. Now that the snow had stopped, there was a bright sun on the horizon. But the weather was even colder. As soon as the snow fell on Li Yunxin's neck, he was so cold that he hissed and shrunk his head. While walking, he said, "My guess is like this. Since some people think that I am the person they are looking for, there must be some factors that make them believe it. Otherwise, they wouldn't have spent half a year and used a lot of resources to bet on me." Lu Gongzan nodded. "That makes sense." Li Yunxin breathed into his hand and said, "So what is this factor?" "In my opinion, there are only a few factors. One is the geographical factor. For example, the person they are looking for must have been born in a certain area. So they cast a wide net and looked for abnormalities. Finally, they found that my parents were abnormal. Since I am a dragon among men, they naturally targeted me." Lu Laodao nodded. "Yes." "The other factor is the time factor. The person must have been born at a certain time. This point is very similar to the previous point. When investigating the geographical factors, they must have noticed this point. So the two are similar. The next factor, because of the various supernatural powers in this world, is very complicated and uncontrollable. I can't say for now. But combining the 2 points, I have a good reason to think that we should look around here. Maybe we will find something unexpected." Lu Laodao listened attentively to him and nodded frequently. In the end, he frowned slightly. "Then Brother Xn, what is this good reason?" Li Yunxin looked at him and said seriously, "Intuition." Laodao was silent for a while. Brother Xin's words make sense. But in fact, there was something else that Li Yunxin didn't say. Just 3 days ago at night, when he was slowly looking around at the demons in the night sky, he inadvertently noticed that there seemed to be a person hiding in the shadows 10 miles away from him. At that time, at that place, the person who appeared was not an ordinary person. Li Yunxin felt that the person's figure was somewhat familiar. He sighed in his heart and continued walking through the forest. Chapter 574. After a quarter of an hour, they finally arrived at the entrance of the village. The houses in the village were low and covered with snow. There was no road and no sound of people. They seemed to be afraid of the cold and didn't get up early. After the autumn harvest, winter was a long period of leisure time. In Li Yunxin's previous world, there was a saying called cat winter. This world was probably the same. There was a big green stone at the entrance of the village. Next to the green stone was an old tree with twisted roots. Now the yellow leaves had fallen and were replaced by white leaves. Li Yunxin walked to the side of the old tree and gently placed her hand on the trunk. He stood there and looked at the village for a while, then said softly, "My father," but he paused. "Li Chunfeng set up many restrictive spells here. But my cultivation was not high enough, so I didn't use them. Today I walked back and slowly found them." He sighed. "I used to see this tree in my house over there, for more than 10 years. Lao Dao could understand the feeling of time has changed, and revisiting the old place. He sighed with him. Brother Xn must have wanted to come here to play at that time. After all, he was a child and would be very lonely. Do you want to go into the village and take a look?" But Li Yunxin smiled and shook his head. "To be honest, I don't want to at all." He put down his hand and gently patted it. "This kind of place, this kind of village, has nothing to do with hard work and simplicity. This village doesn't even have a name. The dozen or so families that live here are all refugees or their ancestors fled here. Selfish, stupid, bigoted, narrow-minded, greedy. Alas, it's not easy to eat and wear warm clothes in this kind of place. How can there be good families? Li Yunxin snorted. There's no one here who broke off my engagement, looked down on me, or slapped my face. What's the point of going in now? I've already checked just now. They're all ordinary people. Let's go. The old Taoist was stunned. You're leaving just like that? Li Yunxin had already started walking. If the person we're looking for really exists, he should be around this village. There won't be anyone in the village. But after all, it's an old place. I'm just here to take a look. Since my home has been demolished, this place has nothing to do with me anymore. In the time it took to say these few words, he had already walked more than 10 steps. Lao Dao sighed, thinking that his brother Xan really did look like a cultivator. On the other hand, he himself had cultivated for dozens of years, and later received the true inheritance. However, he still seemed like a secular person. He sighed emotionally. When he looked up, he saw that Li Yunxin had stopped in front of him. Lu Gongzan moved closer and saw a stone niche. This was a very common thing in the villages of the Midland. Many spirit creatures were hiding in the mountains, and some of them would occasionally show themselves. Thus, he was worshipped as a deity, and thus was made into a statue. The height of this stone niche was only knee-high. There was a statue in the niche, with a round face, long eyes, and 5 strands of long beard. There were no obvious features. In fact, most of the statues carved by the people of the Midland according to their own deities were exactly the same as this one. Only the small plaque on top of the stone niche could tell which deity this statue belonged to. Lu Gongzan's eyes moved to the top of the shrine, which was half covered by snow. He saw 3 shallow engravings, Wolf King Temple. He asked, Brother Xen, is there anything unusual here? Li Yunxin was silent for a while, then said softly, when I left in spring, this thing wasn't here yet. So Lu Gongzan realized the subtle seriousness of this matter. It wasn't strange for a spirit creature to show itself in a remote mountain and pretend to be a deity. However, the location of this mountain village was very sensitive. Any unusual sign might have a deeper meaning. Therefore, it was more likely that the spirit creature was here for Brother Xen or that person. Regarding that person these days, Lu Gongzan had always heard Li Yunxin call him Prince in a teasing tone. He didn't know whether it was an illusion or not, but occasionally he felt that Brother Xian's tone was a bit jealous. Li Yunxin had told many of his secrets to Lu Gongzan, but this was the only thing that he didn't say clearly. Therefore, Lao Dao only knew that some people and some forces thought that Brother Xian was an important person, a chosen one. He used to think so himself. But after these days he slowly realized that those people might have found the wrong person. Their heaven's chosen one was someone else. This time he came here to try his luck. He didn't think that he would definitely find that person, but at least he wanted to find some clues. These thoughts flashed through his mind. On the other side, Li Yunxin had already bent down and gently pressed his hand on the stone niche. Some kind of invisible power spread out with a buzz, and a small whirlwind blew away the snow on the top of the stone niche and around it. Then he straightened up and rubbed his hands. What a guy! Lu Gongzan knew what he was talking about. Just like the statue of the Dragon King in the Wei City's Dragon King Temple had Reiki attached to it, this statue of the Wolf King also had Reiki attached to it. This meant that this was a true god. To a certain extent, it could sense the desires of mortals, and it could also use this to enjoy incense. As soon as he finished speaking, he saw someone walking over from afar. Behind the old tree and the blue stone at the entrance of the village was a shallow, jade-like river. The water was abundant in summer, but now that it was winter, the surface of the river was frozen, and the soil underneath was exposed. The person came from the other side of the river, and it looked like an old man with a walking stick. He wore a linen robe with patches, and his thin body shivered in the cold wind. But his legs were still nimble. He didn't slow down at all when crossing the ice on the river. It was as if he didn't walk but floated. When he stepped on the snow again, there was not a single footprint. The person approached the two and immediately bowed deeply. Two great immortals have come from afar. Sorry for not going out to meet you. Li Yunxin didn't say anything, so Lu Gongzan spoke for him. Lao Dao's Taoist robe was already tattered because of the pain he suffered in Yunshan. Now, Li Yunxin picked a few magic treasures from his pinky finger for him. He was wearing a dark purple celestial robe of the sun, moon and stars. From a distance, this robe didn't look special, just like a silk robe worn by ordinary rich men. However, once spiritual energy was used, the sun, moon and stars would appear on it and colorful light would flow. It could be said to be extremely exaggerated, very suitable to fool ignorant people. He wore a red lotus crown with golden threads inlaid with jade, and a pair of dark cloud shoes on his feet. In his sleeves, there was also a dragon's beard brush and a 2-feet-long sword of clear light. Walking on the road, anyone who glanced at him would know that he was either a powerful Taoist, or a rich and powerful high official or noble. In short, there were only 2 words written on his body, not to be trifled with. Therefore the old man, or the old ghost, after floating over, looked at Lu Gongzan. Now that Li Yunxin was in the profound realm, he could freely control his demonic energy. Even if he stood here and asked the old ghost to spend a whole day investigating, he wouldn't be able to find anything. But Lu Gongzan, Li Yunxin, after the battle at Yunshan, used elixirs to push his cultivation to the peak of the transcendent state. However, he still hadn't fully adapted to this profound state, so he often couldn't control it and revealed the aura of a powerful cultivator. This kind of aura, if it was an ordinary person or a rogue cultivator in the Jianghu, they wouldn't be able to detect it. But this old ghost seemed to have some cultivation, so he knew that the person in front of him must be a powerful cultivator. Lu Gongzan's face was as dark as still water. After waiting for the old ghost to speak, he was silent for 2 breaths. Then he shouted in a low voice, "Do you know your crime?" He used to travel in the Jianghu, and his ability to read people was no less than Li Yunxin's. Now he knew that Brother Xian wanted to ask him questions. And seeing that the old ghost didn't panic at all, he knew that he must be a cunning person. To deal with this kind of person, the right thing to do was to scare him first. Unexpectedly, the old ghost slowly narrowed his eyes and said, "Deity, what crime did I commit?" Lu Gongzan sneered and pointed at the Wolf King Temple. "You, a lonely wild ghost, dare to appear in the world and call yourself a deity? Isn't that a crime punishable by death?" Hearing this, the old ghost was silent for a while. Then, he suddenly straightened his body, straightened his hunched back. His back straightened and his body expanded in the wind. In just 2 breaths' time, he had become a big ghost with a green face and fangs as tall as 2 people, with tattered clothes hanging on his body. Then he let out a rumbling laugh. "Why, you stupid Taoist, until now you still don't know? Daotong Kenzo is no more, now it's the world of demons. How can you be so arrogant?" He stomped his big feet on the snowy ground, but his voice could only be heard by the 2 people in front of him. "I advise you to be smart and leave. Our Wolf King has sought the protection of a little demon, with the protection of Shinryu and Dragon Sun. How can you afford to offend him?" Li Yunxin snorted with a smile. Lu Gongzan got into character and also frowned. "What little demon protection? What nonsense are you talking about? If you want to harm the people of this area, ask me first if I allow it." The big ghost that the old man turned into became proud again. "A few days ago Xianmen was destroyed. You don't know this news? What harm to the people? That's not something I would do. First of all, I was originally from this village, but after I died I became a deity a few hundred years later, so I naturally have to protect this area. Second, our Shinryu and Wei River Lord also ordered, from now on, the protection of the people will be done by us demons, and we will not harm the villagers." At this point, Li Yunxin finally said, "Having attained the Tao for hundreds of years. Wang Difu, don't you recognize me?" After saying this, he took 2 steps forward, letting the big ghost see him more clearly. Although his voice was not loud, it was very clear. As he walked forward, the creaking sound of the snow beneath his feet could be heard clearly. When the old ghost heard the name Wang Difu, he was stunned. Then he widened his big eyes, carefully looking at Li Yunxin. His body suddenly bent down like a leaking balloon, and turned into the old man in linen clothes again. You are..." Li Yunxin breathed into his hands and rubbed his hands. "When my parents were still alive, you often sent some mountain and river seafood over. I knew that you were not in good health. But how did you become a ghost cultivator with hundreds of years of cultivation?" Chapter 575. After listening to Li Yunxin's words, they realized that he was also from this village. But he died less than a year ago, not some ghost king with hundreds of years of cultivation. But even if a mortal died, becoming a ghost cultivator by chance wouldn't have this kind of ability. Looking at his appearance, he could transform into an evil ghost to scare people. He should be a cultivator with an intent. But how could geniuses be everywhere in this world? He must have had some kind of fortuitous encounter. Lu Gongzan coldly looked at this ghost cultivator and said to Li Yunxin, "Brother Xen, this old ghost was arrogant just now. Now that he recognized you, he immediately lost his mind. I guess he knows something. Arrest him first." Interrogate him carefully, then destroy his soul. Li Yunxin casually looked at her fingernails and said, "Do whatever you want." Weren't these words meant for the old ghost to hear? The old ghost hurriedly said, "It's a misunderstanding, I didn't know you were the young master of the Li family. If I knew you were the young master of the Li family, these things wouldn't have happened. I can't thank you enough." Li Yunxin glanced at him. Oh. At this time someone came out of the village. He probably saw the two imposing figures at the entrance of the village and came out to see something new. But when he saw Lu Laodao's clothes, he hurriedly ran back as if his clothes were very scary. The old ghost said, "Since it's the young master, I'll take the young master to see Lord Wolf. Lord Wolf also wants to see the young master." The old ghost's attitude changed from arrogance to deference. Li Yunxin and Lu Laodao knew there must be some inside story. The two of them now had the cultivation to move unhindered in the world, so there was nothing to be afraid of. So they raised their eyebrows. "Okay. You lead the way." The old ghost looked at Lu Gongzan again. Lu Laodao coughed, "If I say go then go. Tell me in detail along the way." Only then did old ghost step forward, leading the two people to the mountain forest north of the village. Since this old thing had become a ghost not long ago, his temperament was similar to those new ghosts. In fact, he was somewhat crazy. Before he had been threatening them, but after a few steps he began to babble like an old man. Before Li Yunxin and Lu Gongzan could ask, he had already told them everything he knew. "Ayaya, little Gongzi, I thought you were killed. Who would have thought that I would become a disciple of an expert, and now I look like I am living a life of luxury." The old ghost had read some books when he was alive. Therefore his words were appropriate. "Speaking of my cultivation, it's all thanks to you. In the words of our wolf lord, it's fate." Li Yunxin glanced at Lu Gongzan. "Oh, how could it be fated? How did you die?" Listening to the old ghost repeatedly mention Wolf Lord, and seeing that Lu Gongzan was at the peak of the transcendent state, he didn't seem to be afraid. It seemed that he had great respect for the so-called Wolf Lord. Listening to his words, it seemed that this old ghost had also told Wolf Lord about Li Yunxin's family, and Wolf Lord was very interested in that matter. It was just that they didn't know how much he knew. A wild monster. He was actually interested in him. Li Yunxin and Lu Gongzan exchanged glances. This matter was within their expectations but also unexpected. One of them said that Li Yunxin had long speculated that there should be some clues nearby. The other was that, it seemed that someone had deliberately come to their door. Hearing Li Yunxin's question, the old ghost laughed. "Little Gongzi's family is not ordinary people. It's a pity that I haven't seen it for more than 10 years. In the spring after little Gongzi left home. Not long after, someone came to the door again. In fact, when the two swordsmen found Li Yunxin, Wang Difu had already seen it. In the past, when Li Yunxin's family lived in seclusion in the mountain village, it was true that they could use magic to create all kinds of food and clothing. However, there was a saying in the Book of Attainment, all things in the universe are constant. It meant that all things in the universe followed a rule that was eternal and unchanging. This unchanging referred to the total amount. This description was a bit profound for people in this era, but for Li Yunxin it was easy to understand. He could understand it as the conservation of total amount. Using magic to create something could be seen as temporarily borrowing energy from the universe to create something out of thin air. However, as time went by, the borrowed energy would eventually be returned, so the magic would gradually lose its effectiveness. Therefore, using the same method of turning stones into gold, it was only a trick used by those with low cultivation, temporarily bluffing people, and soon it would turn into stone again. And for those with high cultivation, the things created could only lose their effectiveness after thousands of years. For mortals it was almost eternal. But for cultivators, there was a problem. If Li Yunxin began to eat all kinds of things created by magic from the age of 1 and then cultivated. Moreover, he was not a genius and his aptitude was only not bad. Then he might have to stumble on this path for hundreds of years. Maybe he would have the chance to enter the realm of supreme indifference and live for thousands of years. Then, when that time came, the things that were created by magic that he had absorbed into his body would slowly return to their original state. Although it wouldn't hurt his bones or cause him to die, there would always be a hidden danger of an unstable foundation. This was also the reason why cultivators had to eat grains like ordinary people before they reached a high realm and needed mortals to worship them. It was also because of the same reason, coupled with factors like fun and hiding their tracks, that Li Yunxin's family also needed a lot of miscellaneous things in the past. Some things could be solved through magic. But there were always things that couldn't be solved. For example, for fairies and immortals with noble and pure temperaments, how could they use magic to dig a cesspool for a child? Even if there were delicious wild animals and mushrooms on the mountain, it was not good to ask the fairy and Sendo to wear short clothes and tie up their hair to catch them. In fact, people spent most of their time in these small things that they usually didn't think of but actually took a lot of effort. Therefore they would occasionally find someone to do it for them. This Wang Difu was an old man in the village. He used to be educated and had a good temperament and appearance. Li Chunfeng and Shang Guanyu talked to him about a small matter. In the following 10 years they only had a little contact, asking him to do some chores, and giving him some money. In a sense, the old man was like a permanent worker, or hired worker in his family. After Li Chunfeng and Shang Guanyu died in the thunderstorm, Li Yunxin didn't have much contact with the villagers. However, when he was a child he ate and wore good clothes. At the age of 14 or 15, his body had also grown up and was much stronger than the long-term malnourished people in the village, so no one dared to cause trouble for him. Then 2 swordsmen came and he fled. After that, there was no one in the Yu family for a month. This Wang Difu boldly came to see them one night. Through the clues he felt that something unusual had happened here. An enemy had come to visit. Most of the people in the village had grudges and criminal records. He was very receptive to this kind of thing and didn't feel surprised. Unexpectedly, that night turned out to be the turning point of his fate. 2 more cultivators came to investigate Li Yunxin's family. Maybe they were people from the Xianmen. Maybe they were people from the Freemasons. Maybe they were some other forces that heard the news and wanted to take advantage of them, but it didn't matter. The newcomers tore down the entire house and searched carefully, not caring that their actions would alarm the villagers. Wang Difu was blocked in the courtyard by the newcomers and was tied up. He stayed up all night in fear. After the 2 cultivators tore down the house and didn't find anything, they interrogated him at dawn. Naturally, he didn't know anything, so he was tossed aside. At that time, the cultivators probably didn't want to take the life of a mere mortal, just like when the 9th young master brushed away Li Yunxin, sending Wang Difu flying 30 feet away and crashing into a pile of rocks. But for an old man this was a fatal injury. Just as the old man was on the verge of death, another person suddenly came. At this point they had already climbed up the mountain. The mountain path was difficult to walk, but the 3 of them weren't ordinary people. In less than half an hour, they had climbed over 3 mountain ridges and entered deep into the mountains. The reason why Li Chunfeng and Shang Guanyu chose to live in seclusion here was because Dingzhou was remote and sparsely populated. Less than 10% of the territory was inhabited, and the rest was all mountains and wilderness. Even with their abilities they couldn't completely explore the surroundings. Now that they were deep in this place, there were no signs of human habitation. If a person had lived here since childhood, he would probably feel that the whole world was nothing but an endless forest, and he wouldn't know where to go to get out. In fact, if one wasn't a cultivator or a monster, it would be very difficult to find the right way. In Li Yunxin's time, there were cases of travelers wandering around in the forest for several days and eventually dying in a place where they could see the road within 10 minutes, let alone in this kind of environment. Swamps, rivers, valleys, cliffs, beasts, mosquitoes and miasma. These things formed a barrier, firmly isolating the people and things in the mountain from the outside. "You came, it's Lord Wolf." The old ghost was excited and gestured as he spoke. "Lord Wolf is the mountain wolf of this mountain. He has cultivated for more than 900 years. Lord Wolf is a demon with a very kind heart. He doesn't eat people, but he only wants to protect this place and become a mountain god. He didn't know our village existed before. Because of that thunderstorm he was curious and found us. That night he saw 2 evil Taoists committing murder. Hey, he used his magical power and tore them apart." Speaking of this, the old ghost gritted his teeth again. That Taoist head rolled next to my face. I was still breathing, thinking, they all say that these are immortals. In the end it was still immortals who killed me. Eating immortals' meat might be able to live, maybe I can also become an immortal. I used the rest of my strength. That Taoist's skin was too thick, I couldn't bite through it, so I ate his eyeballs and the bits and pieces in his neck. The old ghost became more and more excited as he spoke. He looked like he wanted to elaborate further. Li Yunxin said, "Then you choked to death and became a ghost cultivator?" The old ghost was stunned, then said resentfully, "Oh, little Gongzi guessed it. Then I choked to death. Lord Wolf said that seeing my appearance I was a promising material, so he saved me and made me a ghost cultivator." Li Yunxin smiled. "With this kind of will to live, you are indeed a talent. I didn't know you were such a person before." Hearing his praise, the old ghost became happy again. He blinked his drooping old eyes. Lord Wolf asked me about this place, so I told him about little Gongzi's family. Lord Wolf said that your family must also be cultivators. Maybe you have a cultivation method in your hands. If I knew about you earlier, maybe I could invite you to the cave to drink and talk merrily and learn from you. So now I see little Gongzi again. This is fate. I will take little Gongzi to see Lord Wolf. If little Gongzi really has some cultivation method, give it to Lord Wolf. Maybe Lord Wolf will help little Gongzi take revenge. Hearing this, Li Yunxin and Lu Gongzan looked at each other, and their footsteps slowed slightly. Things were really as this old ghost said, then they were wrong. Dingzhou's mountains were vast, and no one knew how many demons were hidden in the mountains. People didn't know, and the demons themselves didn't know either. Perhaps this Lord Wolf was indeed just an ordinary demon, and he indeed had some ideals to become a mountain god and cultivate. But mountains were separated by mountains, so he didn't know that there were people living in the distant mountains, and 3 important people, who would affect the whole world, lived there. Because of the thunderstorm, he went to take a look after more than a month, and saw cultivators demolishing houses and killing people. He took care of the cultivators and then heard these things from the old ghost's mouth, so he became interested in Taoist magic. These were all common sense. However, according to common sense, it wasn't what Li Yunxin was looking for. Seeing the two of them hesitate, the old ghost immediately said, "Huh? What are you thinking? Don't think of running, you can't escape from Lord Wolf's palm." He was a new ghost, so it was reasonable for him to be eccentric, so Li Yunxin was too lazy to argue with him. In fact, the old ghost also didn't know that his life was now in the hands of Li Yunxin. If he really lost interest and wanted to leave with a wave of his hand, this ghost's soul would be scattered and scattered. But Lu Gongzan said in a low voice, "Go to the east, this is the direction after all. Let's wait and see." Li Yunxin thought for a while and didn't say anything. As a result, it turned out that his choice was correct. About an hour later, after going deep into the mountains, the view suddenly opened up. Originally, it looked like a white mountain with black water. The trunks of the towering trees were covered with snow, looking gray and black. The main colors between heaven and earth were gray and white, and occasionally there were scattered pine and cypress trees, so that the scenery in the forest was not too monotonous. However, after turning around a call, the view suddenly opened up. In the dense forest appeared a large, flat, naturally formed stone platform. The stone platform was stacked layer by layer, like many huge squaring stones stacked together. In other seasons, there should be water in the platform. Thinking about the water flowing from one step to another, falling into many small waterfalls, it should be a very beautiful scene. And the water originally came from a higher place. The stone platform was backed by a huge stone wall, as if God used a sharp axe to split the mountain in half. A waterfall flew down from the top of the mountain, like a line of the Milky Way pouring down. But it was now early winter. And because of the changes in the chi of heaven and earth, the cold wave of winter came very quickly. As a result, the waterfall that hung down from the mountain was frozen into a huge line of ice in the air, contrasting beautifully with the layer of ice on the stone platform and the small waterfall. It was as if time had frozen and the water had also frozen. At the bottom of the stone wall there was a doorway. It could be seen that it had originally been formed naturally, but it had been carefully renovated. Now, although there were no flying eaves and arches, just a simple and unsophisticated appearance, the magnificent scene behind it was still extraordinary. When Li Yunxin saw this scene, he inwardly sighed in admiration. Then he saw a figure standing in front of the doorway. When he was in Rong City in the state of Yu, he had seen a wolf-headed Taoist wolf. Now that he saw this person again, he felt that he was somewhat familiar. This was because this person also had the head of a wolf. But compared to Taoist wolf, his appearance was between that of a human and that of a wolf. But not only did this not make him feel familiar, it made him even more terrifying. This should be the Lord Wolf that old devil had mentioned. This Lord Wolf wore a green silk robe, and his figure was quite burly. From afar he looked like a rich man, but he was only one person. When Li Yunxin had pressed his hand on the shrine to check the spiritual energy within, this Lord Wolf must have sensed something and knew that a guest had arrived. When old devil saw this Lord Wolf, he immediately danced with joy. "Young master, look, this is our Lord Wolf." But Li Yunxin's face was expressionless, and even Lu Gongzan's expression did not change. Since this so-called Lord Wolf lived in the mountains and did not know of the existence of the village, and did not go to the state of Yi to participate in the battle between the demons and the Xianmen, it was obvious that he was not a powerful demon. Looking at the aura that he exuded, he was probably not at the peak of the transcendent state. There must be many demons like him. He achieved Tao in the vast mountains and slowly became famous. Because he did not have much power and did not like to cause trouble, he was not well known. In fact, he was somewhat similar to the mortals who lived in the mountains. They were all demons who had not seen the world. But this demon knew about the protection of a small demon. Could it be that he found out by chance? While he was thinking about this, he saw Lord Wolf at the entrance of the cave lift his robe. He stepped on the ice on the ground and strode over. The ice was slippery. But every step he took shattered the ice, so he walked very steadily. The four of them were about 20 to 30 steps away when Lord Wolf laughed heartily. "Old thing, where did you bring the guest from? Our place is deserted, how rare." Lord Wolf was even more enthusiastic than Old Devil. From what he said, it seemed that he was happy because he rarely saw any friends at this moment. But Li Yunxin was no longer the person who had just entered the world of demons. He knew that the more friendly and human the demons looked, the more difficult it was to deal with them. Those who would grimace fiercely the moment they saw each other were much easier to guess. Old Ghost also laughed and said as if he was reporting good news, Master Wolf, this old man has brought you that young master. His master is also here." After saying this, he took a few steps forward. "Lord Wolf, do you still remember? The lay bow that this old man mentioned before and the young master, the Taoist priest who came to our village? Tao scriptures, mantras." Hearing this, Lord Wolf's eyes lit up. He grinned and took even bigger steps, reaching out his hairy hand to the two people. "You two, nice to meet you. Hello. Hearing these two words, Li Yunxin and Lu Gongzan were both stunned. They realized that they might have found the right place. Nice to meet you, and hello. These were words that Li Yunxin had said before, and Lu Gongzan also knew it now. Chapter 576. While they were stunned, Lord Wolf had already walked in front of them. Only then did they see that his green satin robe was actually a little shabby. It looked like he had just taken it off someone. There were also 3 white spots on his forehead. Taoist wolf from Rong City and country who claimed that he came from the extreme north. He said that the true fire snow wolves there all had such a mark on their foreheads. From this, it seemed that this Lord Wolf was not a mountain wolf who had achieved the Tao as the old ghost had said. Perhaps he was also from the extreme north. However, just as Lord Wolf's hand reached out, Li Yunxin suddenly bowed. "I'm sorry to disturb you, Lord Wolf, while I'm wandering around." Seeing Brother Xian's behavior, Lu Gongzan knew that he must have a plan. He also bowed and put on the appearance of an otherworldly master without saying a word. But Lord Wolf did not feel embarrassed. In fact, Li Yunxin even felt that when he withdrew his hand, his face looked as if a heavy burden had been lifted from his shoulders. He remembered this feeling in his heart. Lord Wolf laughed. "What are you talking about? My place is a remote and desolate place with few people. Today, seeing this young master come, I'm more than happy. Oh, is this Gao Gong the teacher of young Master Li? Nice to meet you. Please come in. The old ghost also danced at the side. Lord Wolf, can I cultivate after obtaining the Tao? Can I cultivate?" Lord Wolf laughed. Yes, bring the guest into the cave first." One was an old ghost and the other was Lord Wolf. Neither of them looked like scheming fellows. He was beaming with joy and elation. They did not hide their yearning for the Tao at all. In the past, outside the mountain, if a demon showed such a desire, he would probably be attacked by a group of cultivators. But now, it was unknown whether this Lord Wolf was inexperienced or he thought that the Shenmen had been destroyed. He also knew that a little demon was protecting him, so he was not afraid. When he talked about the Tao, it was as if he already had it in his bag. However, he had repeatedly mentioned "nice to meet you" and "nice to meet you" just now. This subtle contrast made Li Yunxin frown. Things might not be so simple. However, with his current cultivation, what kind of dragon's pool or tiger's den couldn't he go to? Therefore, the two of them remained calm and followed Old Ghost and Lord Wolf into the cave. The cave was just like the mountain. They all looked close and short, but in reality they were both far and tall existences. When they walked past the ice platform and arrived at the entrance of the cave, they discovered that the cave entrance was several zhang high, almost like a small canyon. As soon as they entered the cave, they saw a lot of firewood piled up on both sides of the cave. The firewood was stacked neatly, like the haystacks and firewood stacks of a hard-working farmer in a mountain village. Lord Wolf was chattering non-stop. It was as if a person who had been depressed for a long time had finally found someone to talk to. It was no wonder they were asking about deities and Taoist techniques. Li Yunxin gave him a perfunctory reply and slowly realized that his excitement didn't seem fake. This Lord Wolf seemed to be going crazy when people came. It was as if he was some kind of large dog from his world. Seeing that Li Yunxin was paying attention to the firewood, he immediately said proudly that the demons in his cave abode didn't harm people and that he wanted to be a mountain god that protected the land. Therefore they didn't eat raw food in the cave abode. They had to be cooked like humans. These firewood were gathered by the little demons in the autumn on the mountain. Now that it was snowing, they rushed into the cave. They said that some of the firewood was still buried in the snow and that it would be wet after a few days. They even asked Li Yunxin and Lu Gongzan if there were many demons outside like him, if there were any who wore clothes as gorgeous as his. After asking this question, he didn't wait for an answer and immediately asked the next question. There were occasional pauses, but he also used his huge, half-human, half-wolf head to stare at Lu Gongzan and Li Yunxin, looking very frightening. But when he did this, his mouth was half open, revealing his red tongue. It was like a dog staring curiously at its owner and asking for something. Looking at it like this, it didn't feel scary anymore. He and the old ghost were chattering away one after another. It sounded like they really wanted to know about the outside world. But in fact, it was more like they hadn't seen outsiders for a long time. Now they only cared about talking to their heart's content and didn't really care about any response. After a dozen breaths, the cave turned a corner. The four of them walked around this corner and suddenly saw a wide open space. It turned out that there was another world in this mountain. The cave led straight to a valley. Nature was indeed a work of art. This valley hidden in the mountains was more like a huge courtyard, with many trees and strange rocks forming natural partitions between them, forming many small courtyards. But this small was also relative to the entire valley. If compared to the outside world, a small courtyard was probably equivalent to a big house with 3 entrances. And because of this natural magnificence and boldness, the simple houses built with stones and straw in the courtyard also had a different feeling. After entering this valley, 3 little demons came to greet them. Different from this Lord Wolf, the 3 little demons were in human form. But seeing that there was no demon power overflowing, they should have just transformed into human form and didn't have any demon power. They needed a long time to absorb the spiritual power between heaven and earth or enjoy the incense offerings of the human world to slowly increase their realm. But there was almost no one here. Things like incense offerings were extravagant hopes for them. Because of this, Lord Wolf was probably so eager to obtain Dao techniques. Unfortunately, it wasn't clear if he knew that the spiritual chi between heaven and earth had been messed up by that Way River Lord. Even if he wanted to cultivate after obtaining Dao techniques, he had to go to the Grotto Heavens and Blessed Lands. But according to Li Yunxin's observation along the way, although his cave abode had good scenery, it wasn't a good place with stable spiritual chi. The 3 little demons didn't look special. One was wearing black linen clothes, the other 2 were wearing animal skins. The one in black should be the little leader. Lord Wolf became serious when he saw them. He stopped talking and regained his dignified appearance. The 3 of you take good care of these 2 esteemed guests. Sendo young Master Li rest for a while. I will prepare a banquet to welcome you. After saying this, he didn't wait for Li Yunxin and Lu Gongzan's reply. He turned around and strode into a dense forest, disappearing without a trace. The old demon hurriedly followed and shouted, Great King, I'm coming to help too." This Lord Wolf came and went like the wind, but people couldn't understand him. He suddenly left, but his continuous talking seemed to be echoing in their ears. The remaining 3 little demons looked at each other. After a while, the black-clothed little demon said, "2 esteemed guests, please follow me." As he spoke, his eyes wandered between Li Yunxin and Lu Gongzan, like a child in the deep mountains who saw visitors from outside the mountains, extremely curious. The 2 demons behind him also followed him. They brought Li Yunxin and Lu Gongzan into the house. The house looked like a house from the outside. But once he entered, he realized that it was extremely simple and crude. In fact, there was nothing but a stone bed. Li Yunxin and Lu Gongzan looked around the house, then sat down on the stone bed. But the 3 little demons didn't leave. They stood side by side at the door of the stone house, forming a human door. They didn't seem to understand their lord's intention. Were they really esteemed guests, or prisoners? Since they weren't sure and were stupid, they simply stood at the door and watched. Li Yunxin was both annoyed and amused by his stupidity. But he was not in a hurry. He just wanted to see what Lord Wolf was going to do. Based on what he knew at the moment, he couldn't see through him. So he turned his palm and took out a small bronze mirror. As if he was playing around, he shone the bronze mirror on a small demon dressed in animal skin. Immediately, a wild chicken with its head shrunk back appeared on the mirror. Li Yunxin smiled and said to Lao Lu, "He's a cousin of Brother Pheasant." Then he looked at another little demon in animal skin. But there was nothing in the mirror. He frowned and looked carefully again, only to find that it was a grasshopper lying on the ground. So he smiled to Lu Gongzan, "What scourge?" "Grasshopper." Lao Lu was stunned and also smiled. Although he didn't understand the sentence, he knew it should be a joke from Brother Xian's previous world. Well, he did call this kind of thing like this. He revealed the true identity of the two demons with just a few words. This made the three demons stare with their eyes wide open, as if it was incredible. Li Yunxin used the mirror to look at the leader in black again, but what appeared in the mirror was his original appearance. Li Yunxin and Lu Gongzan were both surprised at the same time, and then they realized that this should be a ghost cultivator. Ghost cultivators were not common. It was not a big surprise that there were two ghost cultivators in this remote place. What was more curious was, the appearance of his ghost was exactly the same as it was now, even the clothes he wore were the same. Li Yunxin realized that the clothes he was wearing now should be the shroud he was wearing when he was buried. His face was a little pale and his eye sockets were dark. It could be said that he was a tuberculosis ghost or a newly dead body. After all, Li Yunxin had nothing to do, so he teased the demon, "Little brother, how did you die?" The leader was stunned for a while and then said, "Sick, died of illness." "Oh," Li Yunxin nodded, "it's a decent death. How has your king been recently?" The little leader was stunned again. "King? King, long live." Li Yunxin waved his hand, knowing that he wouldn't be able to get anything out of them. These three demons seemed to be wearing masks and the masks were full of respect, so it was hard to get anything out of them. At this time the old ghost rushed in again and said cheerfully, "Two honored guests, please come with me, Lord Wolf has prepared a banquet." The demons in this immortal's cave all seemed to be hotheads who didn't understand human emotions. Moreover, when he did things, he was burning with impatience and seemed to be in a rush. But this kind of different style of doing things was also what Li Yunxin wanted. As the saying goes, the more you do, the more mistakes you make. If Lord Wolf really had some tricks up his sleeves, he would probably reveal more important details very soon. So he and Lu Gongzan stood up, walked past the three demons and followed the old ghost. Along the way they made many turns, passing through many small courtyards that were separated. Because of this, they knew that there weren't many demons in this cave. Compared to the other demon kings that Li Yunxin had seen before, they were really shabby. But surprisingly clean. This clean didn't mean that there were no impurities, but rather that there were no fishy or foul smells. This meant that there was no blood food in the valley. Perhaps Lord Wolf was telling the truth. Their eating habits were already very similar to humans. Finally they arrived at a courtyard deep in the valley. A wooden door was set up at the entrance of the courtyard. Looking inside, they saw that the snow on the ground had already been swept clean and replaced with yellow soil. A stove was built in the middle of the courtyard, and on top of the stove was a large vat. The firewood below was burning brightly, and the vat was gurgling with heat and fragrance. Li Yunxin could also smell some wild vegetables and spices. He could barely be considered a glutton in his previous life, so he knew that this smell wasn't freshly cooked. The soup base in the vat must have been simmered for a long time, or perhaps the fire under the vat had never stopped burning, to be able to cook such a mellow fragrance. But he didn't know if this Lord Wolf was really 900 years old. Would the soup base in the vat also contain human flesh juice? Looking to the side, he saw a wooden stand on the side. There was a large gong hanging on the stand. A shifty-eyed little demon was standing in front of the gong with a wooden stick in his hand, not knowing what he was planning to do. Lord Wolf himself was sitting behind a stone table in the courtyard. There were two more tables on the left and right. Seeing Li Yunxin and Lu Gongzan, he shouted, "Two honored guests, please take a seat. I caught a deer a few days ago, it has been stewing for 4 hours, it's delicious. Old thing, come and look at the wine." The old ghost led the two to sit on the left and right of Lord Wolf. Then he picked up a large ladle. If Li Yunxin was not mistaken, he had seen this ladle before in old Lu's Dragon King temple. But it was used to scoop up dung. He went to the side of the vat, stirred the ladle vigorously in the vat and scooped something out. Seeing this scene, Li Yunxin couldn't bear to look at it, and for the first time he sympathized with a demon. He heard Lord Wolf say, "Sigh. I've made a fool of myself before. Actually, I don't have many people around here, now that I see two honored guests, I'm so happy that I have a lot to say." Li Yunxin looked at the suspicious wooden plate on the stone table in front of him, thought for a moment. Lord Wolf has been cultivating for 900 years. You've never gone outside to take a look? Lord Wolf laughed. Hee 900 years? That old thing said, young Master Li and Sendo don't know, us demons this cultivation, hee. Who dares to claim to have cultivated for 100 years just because they have cultivated for 10 or 20 years? For those who have cultivated for more than 200 years, they claim to have cultivated for hundreds of years. After 500 years, they dare to claim to be a 1,000-year-old demon. My 900 years are only 360 years, it doesn't count, it doesn't count. Li Yunxin laughed. Lord Wolf is also familiar with the affairs of demons. Lord Wolf laughed again. Not at all, not at all. My cave abode is deep in the mountains. I don't know when I attained Tao. As soon as I gained sentience I was in the mountains. When I was a wild beast I ran to many places, but after becoming a demon, I became even more timid. What if I ran around everywhere and barged into another demon king's territory and got killed? So at first I was very careful and didn't dare to go anywhere, only hiding in this valley. Later I slowly grew up and gained some courage, so I looked around. But this mountain range is vast. After walking for 10 days to half a month I still see a sea of trees. After a few years I felt that perhaps this world is full of towering trees, and lost interest. Then occasionally, other demons passed by. From them I learned many things about this world, but I didn't know much. At this point Lord Wolf finally stopped laughing. But the more I know, the more afraid I am. How would I dare to go out? He didn't know if what he said was true or false. But at least it was logical and reasonable. It sounded like a wild child who grew up in the mountains, afraid of the outside world, not daring to go out. It was reasonable. If not for the initial, nice to meet you, and hello. Hearing this, Li Yunxin and Lu Gongzan exchanged glances. Just as they were about to speak again, they suddenly heard a loud bang. It scared them so much that their livers trembled, and their souls almost left their bodies. Li Yunxin was so scared that he almost flipped out. Just as he was about to jump up and scold, he realized that the little demon who was standing next to the huge gong had used all his strength to knock the gong with the wooden stick in his hand. Then he heard the old demon who was scooping meat from the vat suddenly say solemnly, "Let's start the feast." Lord Wolf also sat up straight. He looked at Lu Laodao with a serious expression, then looked at Li Yunxin. Sendo, young Master Li, this is the so-called the bell rings and cauldron eats. This is a noble etiquette from ancient times. Now, I use it to entertain distinguished guests like you. Seeing him like this, Li Yunxin could only sigh in his heart. He saw that the old demon scooped out a trembling oily spoonful of fat, and poured it into the plate in front of Lu Gongzan, then Li Yunxin's plate. Then he took a sharp wooden stick and stabbed a huge heart from the vat, smashing it in front of Lord Wolf. This Lord Wolf narrowed his eyes. He stared at the heart, which was as big as his head, for a while, then said, "Both of you please enjoy. I won't be polite." Li Yunxin was about to speak, but Lord Wolf had already buried his head into the heart. All he heard was a series of barking and the sound of juices splashing. His heart was deflated by the food he had eaten. In less than 4 breaths' time, half of it was already in his stomach. Then Lord Wolf raised his head again, the short hair on his face soaked in juices. He licked his tongue and looked at Lu Gongzan, then looked at Li Yunxin, then asked curiously, "Why don't you two distinguished guests use it? Once you're full we can go study the Tao technique." Li Yunxin and this Lord Wolf had only met for half an hour. However, half an hour ago he felt that he had found the right person. Now half an hour later he was not so sure. This Lord Wolf seemed like an idiot. Perhaps the nice to meet you, and hello, he mentioned were only heard from a passing demon. Perhaps that demon was related to the person Li Yunxin was looking for. He was disappointed. He decided not to waste any more time with this idiot. So he sighed and pushed the wooden plate in front of him away. "Lord Wolf." But Lord Wolf buried his face in the heart again and finished it in 6 bites. Then he jumped up, stretched out his long tongue and licked the short hair on his cheeks clean. Then he narrowed his eyes and said in a deep voice, "I know what you two want to ask." His tone suddenly changed. "After sunset tonight, please come find me in this thatched cottage in my backyard." You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.